And now, the final arc. Get ready, fighters! 3 to Senshi, Arc 3, final part, Chapter 9, Throwing Down the Gauntlet. Han gripped the Millennium Falcon controls as the freighter screamed through hyperspace. With the emergency boosters now on, the ship was now going faster than any ship in the history of space travel. Downside, however, was that the ship was this close to actually falling apart and scattering itself across several thousand light years. Leia checked the ship's hull integrity. "We're lucky this hunk of junk didn't come apart 2 days ago," she said through strained teeth. Chewie roared. "The ship's engines have been past the red line for 2 hours." The former smuggler chuckled to himself. "That proves just how tough this ship really is." Leia checked the sensors from her seat. "We'll emerge from hyperspace in 10 minutes. Han nodded and flashed her his trademark lopsided smile. "Just as she hold together." He then leaned forward and patted the control console. "You hear me? Hold together just a little longer." In the main cabin sat Mara, Jaina, Anakin, Jason, and Hotaru. Jason's brow was drenched in sweat as he chuckled. "Hey, anybody want to hear a joke?" Anakin's head shook, but none of his own volition. "I'm afraid, dear brother, that I won't find anything funny right about now." He glanced over at Hotaru, and his eyes widened at her appearance. Hotaru's pale skin was a sickly gray, and she looked like she was about to throw up. Anakin leaned over, grabbed her hand, and sent calm, soothing thoughts to her through the Force. The young girl's cheeks quickly regained some color, but not from the thoughts. Shaking his head, it shook as he turned to Mara. "So, you think we'll make it?" Mara nodded and smiled at her niece. "The ship can go through anything. We'll make it." As soon as he said that, the entire ship bucked and heaved as it hit turbulence. Mara's green eyes flashed in annoyance. "Of course, I could be wrong." She reached into a pocket on her jumpsuit, pulled out the crystal shard. Mara turned it over in her delicate fingers, marveling at it. "I hope one of us can figure out how to use this thing." Jaina thought about it. "I've got a notion about it, but we'll need all 7 shards." Suddenly, the intercom cracked to life. "This is Han! We're repulsing out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. Mark!" On a different vector, a lone X-Wing soared through hyperspace. Luke checked his engine's reabouts. "We'll emerge from hyperspace in 29 seconds." Terry nodded enthusiastically. "Well, great! I can't wait till we get these shards and destroy Xiv's spirit!" Although she was smiling, Luke could sense inside her inner worry. He felt something similar, but didn't know what it was. He checked the X-Wing's control panel and pulled down a lever. The reddish smear outside the canopy broke apart into streaks, then reverted into steadily glowing stars. Luke checked his approach vector and found he was right on course for the jungle moon. Without warning, his danger sense flared. He set the flyer into a starboard turn just as the Millennium Falcon emerged from hyperspace less than 200 meters away. The distant freighter screamed past and looked like it was barely in control. The Jedi Master quickly increased power to the 4 engines while also contacting his sister through the Force. "Leia, what's happening?" "Can't talk right now, Luke. We're barely holding on right now." Leia abruptly broke the connection, leaving her twin brother close to panic as he watched the Falcon plunge into Yavin 4's atmosphere. He knew he and Tyree would arrive 2 minutes later. The question was, would they still be alive in 2 minutes? Han struggled with the controls as the Falcon bounced around. Although the shields were still up and would prevent the ship from burning up, there was still the possibility of crashing into the ground at several times the speed of sound. Through the view screen, the jungle's moon was barely visible against the burning red shields. Amazingly, the ship was still on course for the main temple. Chewie pushed a button on his console that would activate the repulsor lifts and slow down the freighter. Nothing happened. Chewie roared and banged on the console, adding several dents to the already battered piece of equipment. "Work, damn you, work!" Leia groaned and turned to her husband. "Does that mean what I think it means?" She impulsively kicked the bulkhead in front of her, and the repulsor flares lifted to life. Slowing down the freighter, she smiled and nodded. "I guess maybe Jaina got some of her mechanical tariffs from me." Her husband shrugged. "Maybe. Just don't get too cocky about that." The freighter continued its ascent towards the great temple, Han maneuvering the Falcon toward the landing field. But he quickly realized something. He hit the intercom and shouted, "All hands, brace for crash landing!" He slapped the comm off and snarled as he rechecked the speed. "We're still going in too fast. We'll survive, but the ship will plow into a thorough to the ground and wreck the underside." He turned his head to make sure Leia was strapped in, then grabbed the console. "Hold on!" The Falcon subsequently hit the ground at half speed, instantly shorting out the repulsor lifts and plowing into the dirt. The momentum carried it another 10 meters before the disc-shaped freighter ground to a halt. Luke's X-Wing landed right beside it. The canopy popped open, allowing the Jedi Master to leap out and run to the freighter. He extended his senses out, trying to detect life aboard the ship. He took out a moment, but let out a breath when he sensed 8 life forms. "They're all safe," he thought as the Falcon's dorsal hatch popped open. A brown-haired girl popped her head out and focused on the blond man. "Uncle Luke, am I glad to see you!" Tia said as he clanged out, followed by Mara, Jason, Anakin, Hotaru, Chewie, Han, and Leia. None looked injured, but Hotaru looked paler than ever. "That was not fun," the black-haired girl muttered, clenching her stomach. Tyree climbed out of the X-Wing and ran to Luke. She tugged on his robe to get his attention before speaking. "Master Solar's coming, and he doesn't look happy." Luke turned and saw his old friend heading toward him. Without preamble, the elder spoke, his voice raw. "He's got her! The bastard's got her!" Luke grabbed Cam by his shoulder. Oh, that was Cam, sorry. And looked into his eyes. "Cam, calm down. Who are you talking about?" The Jedi Master motioned to the way. "Baraxis. He got Tion and her group on Yavin 13 and a Victory-class Star Destroyer in orbit. He wanted you to contact him when he got back." A single tear rolled down his eyes as he spoke. Luke's normally calm exterior threatened to dissolve as he heard the news. He let go of Cam's shoulders and stepped back, drawing upon the force for calm. He turned his head back to the Falcon and saw that everyone was on the ground, safe for now. Leia sensed her brother's distress and ran over to him. "What is it?" Luke spoke quickly. "Baraxis has captured Tion and her group. They're on Yavin 13. He glanced up at the gas giant and the other moons orbiting, as if trying to see Tion on them. Leia's face flashed pale, then turned a bright crimson as her legendary anger spiked. "That no-good Sith wannabe wants to fight? Fine!" She marched to the temple. "I'm contacting General Antilles and telling him to get to Camino. I'm talking to Akbar and having him send a task force to Yavin 4. The Jedi Master sprinted up the steps after her. "Wait!" He quickly got between her and the steps. "I must speak to Baraxis first, but don't send a task force to Yavin 13 yet. That would make him nervous and might lead to casualties." The two ran up the stairs and into the great temple and entered a turbolift in the foyer. The car descended to the basement, and when the doors opened, Leia and Luke speedwalked to the communications center. With a practiced hand, Luke activated the hulking piece of machinery and sent a signal to Yavin 13, the desert moon. After a tense minute, a staticky voice came over the loudspeaker. "Hello, Master. How are you this fine morning?" Luke gripped his teeth. "Cut to the chase, Baraxis. What do you want?" The Sith Lord's voice went an octave lower as he spoke. "Come to Yavin 13 and bring all those pretty crystal shards that you have gathered. Otherwise, your friends die most gruesomely. And make sure to bring the sword of the Sith." Click! A click sounded over the speaker, indicating that Baraxis had cut him off. Luke stepped back to allow Leia access to comm. While she contacted Coruscant and began making plans, the Jedi Master went back to the turbolift and ascended to the main foyer. After a few seconds, he stepped out into the great temple and saw everyone. Everyone? Mara, Jaina, Anakin, Jason, Hotaru, Tyree, Lusa, Tenokon, Zek, and Ami stood at the bottom of the steps. And all 10 looked down while Mara spoke. "We took a vote, and we're going with you." She smirked lightly. "I guess you're outfarted, farm boy." His ice blue eyes widened in shock. He tried to tell them that he couldn't, that it was too dangerous, that he might be killed. But the looks of utter determination on their faces temporarily robbed him of the ability to speak. When he could finally utter the words, he simply said 6 words. "The Force will be with us." Mara fell into step behind him as he walked down the steps. "You had better go in your X-Wing alone," Mara said. "We'll split up into 2 groups and approach from different angles." In the back, Ami spoke up.
Won't Paraxis ship in order to be able to detect us?
Jaina thought for a second. No. He's got a Victory-class Star Destroyer, right? At Luke's nod, she continued. Their sensor range is pretty limited, and can't sleep behind planets. The group stepped in front of the Jade Saber and the Steel Dragon. A few meters away, Han and Chewie crawled over their baby and checked over to battery her out. Hull's still intact, but the engines will take a month of work. Chewie pointed to a piece of hull plating dangling from the cockpit. On! The former smuggler groaned. Hull's not intact! Make it 2 months! He kicked the hull, battering his toe and causing him to hop back in pain. Tia looked over at her father.
Looks like Dad and Chewie stay here.
Chick thought for a second, tilting his head to the side. Do we have a map of the moon?
Mara shook her head. It was never really charted. All it really has is an annotation in Coruscant's main computer.
She paused for a moment, as a thought crossed her mind.
Besides, even if we had a map, we don't know where Barax's location is.
She reached over and patted Zack on the shoulder.
Good idea, though.
Tenokon spoke up.
That is a fact. We don't know what he has in the way of the forces. For all we know, he could have an army of dark side clones and a battalion of stormtroopers. We must be cautious.
Tari waved her hand to Risen.
Please, with our new powers and the Sailor Senshi and you men, Baraxis won't stand a chance.
Ataru's face took on a natural grimness, even for her.
Don't think that way. This battle will be hard, Tyree. We're going up against an unknown enemy who has the advantage of terrain and probably numbers. As General Cobb would say, we must try to be cautious.
At that, Jason's head snapped to the right and looked at the younger girl. No, we must do or do not. There is no try. Ataru nodded.
And bit serene. Yes, you're correct.
Mara thought for a moment. The only way I can see this working is if Luke goes in his X-Wing, like we discussed earlier. We split into 2 groups, land a few kilometers away, and sneak up on Barax's encampment. She looked at her husband. I'm afraid you'll be the bait in our little trap. Luke shrugged. We all have our part to play. He broke from the circle and slowly walked to his trusty friar. He opened up the cargo compartment and pulled out the ancient sword. His cobalt blue eyes, sweeping over the intricate designs, burned into the steel of this unholy artifact. Each one was a ward designed to keep Zim's spirit encased in the weapon. Even the handle contained loops, curls, and other patterns. He held it up high so everyone could see it. My life is secondary compared to the destruction of Zim's spirit. Keep the shards on you. Find Tion, Sana, Loe, Setsuna, Luna, and Luna. Get them to safety. Then, get the shards together and combine them into the weapon. Understood? Ami pursed her lips and shook her head before speaking up, voice rising with each word.
No! Your life is also important. It won't be secondary to some spirit.
The rest voiced their agreement with the blue-haired genius, murmuring slightly. Luke faintly smiled as the depth of their conviction sank in. I am truly blessed to be going to battle with these people. After 10 more minutes, the battle plan was set. Mara, Anakin, Hataru, Lusa, and Ami would go into the Jade Saber. Tenokon, Jaina, Jason, Tyree, and Zek would go into Steel Dragon. And finally, Han, Chewie, and Leia would remain behind and wait for the New Republic Task Force, commanded by Admiral Akbar. The preparations made were quick enough, but thorough. Nobody wanted a loose wire or a malign scanner to spell disaster for the rescue. Tenokon and Jaina walked alongside the Steel Dragon. Inspecting the cruiser, Jaina pointed to a flat sheet of crystal and remarked,
That shielded mirror's gotta be swapped out.
She glanced up in time to see her brother clearing out an intake vent.
Jason, can you get a shielded mirror from the hangar bay and swap out this one?
Her younger brother let out an overdramatic sigh and held his forearm to his forehead. Oh, will I ever get a break from you, oh cruel taskmaster? Tia placed her hands on her hips, and fixed a miniature version of Leia's glare of death upon her younger brother, causing him to crawl off to the sea cruiser and run to the great temple. She turned to her best friend and sighed, rolling her eyes at the same time.
Honestly, what do you see in him? He's immature and can never take anything seriously.
Tenokon's gray eyes twinkled in amusement.
That is precisely why I like him, friend Jaina.
Inside the Dragon, Zek and Tyree checked out the main writing on the engines. Tyree took his head while looking over an incomprehensible mess of wires.
Why am I doing this? I don't know anything about wiring for a ship. Couldn't someone else help you?
Sek turned his head for several connections and blew some straight hair out of his eyes before speaking. There is no one else, Tyree. Besides, I won't have you do anything you can't handle. He reached his long arm into the hole and pulled out a rectangular piece of plastic studded with metal. This is a circuit board, he said, handing it to the young blonde. When I say now, press the red button. Tyree nodded, placed a finger on the button. This was something she could do. Sek reached in and grabbed a handful of wires. Now Before he stopped speaking, as Tyree's finger jabbed the red button, a jolt of electricity surged through Sek's right hand, throwing him back and out the hole in the bulkhead. Tyree's green eyes widened in shock, and her mouth hung open. It took her for a second, but she dropped the circuit board and crawled over to Sek.
Are you alright? I didn't mean to do that, but you said now, and I assume you meant now!
Sek's right arm shook, and his hand opened and closed. It tingled in a most unpleasant manner, and there were slight burn marks on his finger. I'm all right. He knew that he had to calm down, and he knew he had to calm down to panicky Tyree. He also knew it wasn't her fault, and didn't want to increase her panic. I'm the one who screwed up. I said now, and I also told you to bust the button when I said that. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and projected soothing thoughts into her mind. The young girl gulped.
I'm so sorry about that.
Sek waved her off. Hey, no problem. He flexed his fingers a few more times, then crawled back across the deck plane and into the hole. Let's try that again, shall we? He grabbed a bundle of wires and began sticking them into various connector ports. Tyree tentatively picked the circuit board back up and held it at the ready, desperate not to hurt him again. After another minute, Sek backed out and looked up at the young girl. Okay, punch it! Her finger jabbed the button on the circuit cord. A loud click sounded from somewhere within the hunk of plastic, and lights embedded within the circuit board began flashing off and on. As she looked at it, she somehow knew that it was fixed, making her smile. Sek took it from her and smiled. Great! Everything's all set here! He leaned into the hole and hooked the circuit board into its proper section. Finally, he hauled both he and Tyree up into a standing position. As he looked up at the tall, lanky Jedi, said,
Now, where do we go?
Sek half closed his and thought for a moment. He pointed to a door that led to the answer room and spoke. Once we check there, we'll be all set to go. On the Jade Saber, preparations were also being made. Mara and Anakin sat in the cockpit, Jedi Master examining a data pad, while her nephew sat in the pilot's chair and checked each system. Okay, weapons, life support, and the answers are all nominal. How are the shields? Mara looked over at the street out at Control Panel.
We're all set, ready as we'll ever be.
And then nodded. Can you go back and double-check the engines with Ami? Anakin gave her a curt nod, got out of the chair and left the cockpit. He found Mizuno Ami in the aft of the ship, examining one of the ship's fusion reactors. Anakin cleared his throat, alerting to his presence. How is it? She turned her head around and smiled.
Anakin, I'm glad you're here.
She stepped back from an open panel, allowing him to see into the machinery.
I tested the cooling system, and it appears 100%.
Anakin nodded as he leaned at the waist and examined her fine work. Looks good. Now, let's check out the hyperdrive motivator. The blonde Jedi replaced the panel and walked up to a pedestal in the center of the room while Ami followed. The young woman was absolutely fascinated by, to her, at least futuristic machinery. Anakin unlocked a series of clasps on either side, and the two carefully lifted the top part off. After settling it down, he looked inside and pulled out a spool of wire filament. The silvery strands glittered in the room, lighting as the youngest soul checked for any fraying. The wire routes the power from a fusion generators into the main motivator assembly. Without it, we're dead in space. He finished looking it over and ran several diagnostics before carefully placing it back in. The two put the cover back on and locked it down. You're getting to be very good with our technology, he said, causing Ami to blush.
Oh, I'm not that good,
she said with a hint of embarrassment. Anakin let out a hint of a smile to sew on his passive face. Yeah, you are. I've never seen anyone else adapt to alien technology faster than you. Ami struggled as the pair checked several more panels, walking around the engine room.
Everyone says how smart I am, but all I do is work hard.
He nodded absentmindedly to their words. Sometimes that's all you need. He looked at her from next to his pal. The engine room's all set. Let's head for the cockpit. The two trainees sealed up the panels before exiting the engine room and making their way to the front of the ship. They found Mara with a headset on, talking quietly. Just be careful, farm boy. She then giggled for a second before replying to the person on the other end. Hey, save that talk for later. She suddenly sat up, looked over her shoulder as she saw the pair. Ollie's face was beet red, while Anakin had a serene expression on his face. Mara groaned and put her hand on her forehead. She felt a headache begin to form. I'll see you on Yavin 13. Yeah, the Force be with you too. She hit a button on the control panel, terminating the conversation she was having. She swiveled around in the chair and glared at the two. That conversation you heard never happened. Got it? Anakin rolled his eyes. Got it, Aunt Mara. Ami simply nodded her head, cheeks still red. The red head sighed, and then turned back to the ship's controls. Ami, you take the co-pilot's chair. Anakin, I want you monitoring the engines. The two nodded and sat down. She did a final check, then powered up the engines. She contacted the Steel Dragon and Luke's X-Wing. Steel Dragon X-Wing, this is Jade Saber. We're all set for takeoff. A female voice came over the intercom. We're all set, Aunt Mara. Anytime you're ready. A soft click was heard. Then Luke's voice came over. I am as well. I'll take off first. Give me a half hour, then follow. The comm went dead. Mara glanced up and saw the X-Wing lift off the ground. The landing gear retracted, and the sleek fighter shot off into space. Mara checked her wrist chronometers held back. Now all we can do is wait. In the Saber's main cabin, Ataru also waited. She waited for Lusa, who was finishing construction of her lightsaber. The young centaur had finished most of the assembly while en route from Chiron, and was all that needed now was a crystal. She held up her transformation wand and shouted, Chiron Pyre! Make up! A sheen of crystal enveloped her upper body and lower part of her equine legs. It shattered, revealing a Sailor Fuku with a white-blue skirt and matching bow. Greaves fastened themselves to the lower part of her legs as he changed into Sailor Chiron. She held out her gloved hands and cupped them together. The space between them glowed as she concentrated. After a few moments, the white light faded and Chiron separated her hands, placing a pure white crystal on the crystal table. As the Jade Saber and Steel Dragon counted down, Lusa fitted the crystal into a socket and screwed on the emitter plate. She nervously stepped back as Skisley held the weapon up high. She held her breath and, with an air of finality, thumbed the activation switch. A smoky green beam shot out, casting shadows onto the walls and cargo containers. Chiron concentrated for a moment, and a bright light surrounded her. When it faded, she was once more Lusa. Ataru looked over the shaft of light with her violet eyes.
It is expertly made,
She said, nodding. Lusa deactivated and cut the lightsaber to her belt. I'm now a Jedi, she whispered. After a few moments, the comm crackled to life with Mara's voice. Okay, we've given Lucas head start. Now, it's our turn. Strap in and hold on tight. Lusa and Ataru ran to a set of benches, bolted to the bulkhead. While Ataru sat down and stepped in, the young centaur stood off to the side and shrugged on his straps fastened to the wall, specially made for her. The ship vibrated slightly as the engines powered up and shot the sleek cruiser out of the atmosphere, followed closely by the Steel Dragon. Mara sent a message to her husband through the Force. We're coming, my love. Thank you. I'm sending you to Star Destroyer's location. A series of numbers streamed across one of the Saber's control screens. Anakin read the number. That ship's above the equator. Mara contacted the Steel Dragon. Jaina, are you getting info from Luke? In the Dragon's cockpit, Jaina checked the numbers from her uncle. Got it, Aunt Mara. I successfully split up and circle around at a distance of 21,000 kilometers. That way, the Star Destroyer won't detect us until we've crossed the other side of the planet. Mara's voice came over the speaker. That's a good idea. We'll maintain radio silence until planetfall. Jade Saber out. Tia bit her lower lip in nervousness as the comm went dead. The Steel Dragon approached Yavin 13 as she steered the ship away from the Star Destroyer and orbited in a wide arc. The 800-meter gray arrowhead stood out against the planet's brown surface, making it easy to spot even with her eyes. Zek kept one eye on the engines and one eye on the proximity alarm. Jaina sent the cruiser into a tight turn as it crossed the meridian and, after a few minutes, Sex spoke with relief in his voice. That's it. We're on the other side of the planet.
Jaina's hand slapped a comm button. Jade Saber, this is the Steel Dragon. Come in, please. After a few minutes, Jaina anxiously repeated the messages. Jade Saber, come in, please. The comm finally cracked, and Mara's voice came over. This is the Jade Saber. How did you get here so fast? Jaina let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding in. Sorry, we took the expressway, as Sotaro or Ami would say. Sek looked up and quickly spied the saber.
Mara, we're about 200 kilometers away.
Then a thought struck the former bounty hunter.
Does anyone know where Master Skywalker landed?
10 minutes earlier. Luke brought his X-Wing in for a quick landing. He popped the canopy off and jumped down with the sword of the Siths already slung over his shoulder. His Siths carried with him a sense of urgency as he crossed over sand dunes. Braxis had instructed him to land nearly a kilometer from the meeting site, obviously hoping to tire Luke out. However, Luke had grown up on the sandblasted wasteland known as Tatooine. Hey, that's not nice, narrator. What do some of the people who live on Tatooine think about it?
Man, this is a sandblasted wasteland.
Well, okay then. This little moon was like a walk to the park to him. He eventually came upon the two large sand dunes that formed a mini valley about a kilometer long and half a kilometer wide. 4 figures stood in front, and he quickly discerned their identities. The Jedi Master walked up to a wizened old hag dressed in a long black robe. Hello, Gazerion. It's been a while. Gazerion, progenitor of the dark side sect known as the Night Sisters, stared at the Jedi. So, you've finally grown up, eh? She reached out to caress his cheek, but he leaned back away from her with her hand. Bah! Last time I saw you, you were but a pup. Now you've gained age and power. Luke simply turned from the crone to the next clone. His stomach clenched in revulsion as he realized who it was. He stretched out his senses and confirmed the clone's identity. His stomach twisting. Hello, father. His ice blue eyes looked into identical orbs. This wasn't Darth Vader standing before him. Instead, Anakin Skywalker looked upon his son. Oh, he's still my beating heart. Okay, so now we've got Luke facing off against normal Anakin. Vivek, you know how to touch my buttons.
I see you didn't hold back, he said in an arrogant voice. Oh, no, we're not doing Hayden Christensen. Nope.
No. Let's see. Who do I got that would be a better voice actor? Let's see. Who's in my repertoire? Oh! Luke noted he wore an odd braid that trailed over his right ear and reached his shoulder, along with a tunic. His temper flared for an instant as he addressed the abomination. Ben said it was impossible to redeem any of you clones. He also said it was impossible to redeem Darth Vader. I know there is good. Anakin held up his hand, stomping his feet. Ben's right this time. We'll fight you, and we'll kill you. Johnny Young Boss? What? Are you saying you wouldn't want to see Johnny Young Boss fight Luke Skywalker instead? Well, yeah. He stepped back, allowing Luke to continue on. The next clone was definitely a Dark Lord of the Sith. An odd helmet set on his bald-headed skull. His torso was covered by scale-like armor. Oh my gosh! It's Darth Helmet! Hey! I thought we weren't going to do the rest of the Spaceball gags! Give me that! Luke's eyes noted that one of the plates pushing out of rhythm of the clone's breathing. He reached out with the force, and with a quick scan, discovered that the armor was alive. The clone smiled as he seen Luke's grappling rolling discomfort. You like them? I found the Orbalisk armor on the moon of Dixon. It's quite strong. Luke shook his head in disgust, lips twisting. I can't believe you allowed those things to grow on you. The clone's white eyes narrowed. They provide protection for me, while I provide nourishment for them. Seems like a fair trade, wouldn't you say? He asked, turning around and showing it off not unlike a fashion model. Luke quickly walked away from the clone and approached the last one. The Jedi Master clenched his fists
with contempt-filled green eyes and a sneer on his face. Why, hello, Master Skywalker, the clone of Kip Duron said, mockingly bowing before Luke. Luke walked past Kip and approached the encampment. He felt the quartet close in on him, making him feel a little trapped. He set up a simple telekinetic shield around himself, repelling them and allowing them to continue on. He quickly spotted Tion, Loey, Sana, Sasuna, and Luna in the middle. All four humanoids were bound with stun cuffs, but they looked none the worse for wear. And Luna had a small little shock collar around her neck. That's animal abuse! Tamith Kai stood off to the side with Sasuna's time staff, her violet eyes trailing up and down the mystic item. Finally, he spotted Baraxis himself. Instead of fancy robes, the Sith Lord wore a set of obsidian-colored armor with heavy gauntlets. His long blonde hair was tied back instead of being loose. His blue eyes held a malevolence that almost unnerved Luke. He held out a gloved hand and motioned, "Give me the sword, Skywalker." Luke removed the sword from his scabbard and held it up. "Is this what you want?" he asked, light glinting off the mystic writing on the blade. "Do you really know what it is?" Bryces nodded. "Yes, it is the key to my ultimate power. With it, I and Tamith Kas will rule for eternity. Give it! Give it now!" Luke closed his eyes and shook his head. With a measure of sadness, he spoke. "No. This sword is a prison for an ancient dark spirit named Zim the Despot. If it is destroyed, his spirit will possess you, and the galaxy will suffer for an eternity." His face took on a look on pleading. "Please, Bryces, listen to me." Bryces eventually lowered his arm and looked at Jedi Master with equal parts of confusion, anger, and trepidation crossing his handsome face. After a minute, he rolled his head back and laughed. "Ha ha ha ha! You honestly expect me to believe that blow to bother dung?" He raised his arm again and clenched his fist, seizing the sword in a force grip. Luke's cybernetic hand held on, though. All the while he cast out his senses, trying to find his friends and family he knew were coming. Bryce's eyes blazed with fury as he realized he could never break Luke's iron grip. He motioned to his captors and shouted, "Give me the sword, or your friends die." Blue's lightning crackled around his fingers as he telepathically entered. Sasuna Tion's face would have been carved for stone. Loey, meanwhile, bared his fangs in defiance as the lanky Wookiee roared. Luna's face betrayed a hint of panic, while Santa's breath came in ragged gasps. Luke closed his eyes and let go of the sword, letting it sail toward Baraxis. He felt the Sith Lord's attention focus slowly on the sword, and at the moment it reached his gloved hand. He sent a tiny nudge in the direction of the five captives. In an instant, all five of their bonds unlocked, but Baraxis and Tamith Kai were too busy with their treasure to notice. Luke's eyebrows quirked as he felt a tremor in the Force. He instantly identified the four signatures of his wife, his niece, his nephews, and their friends, and damped down a smile. At that same moment, Bryces turned back to his former master. "Now that I have this, I have no need for those little shards of the crystal or you." He raised his left hand to point at Luke. "Goodbye, Luke." At that moment, all hell broke loose. Chapter 10. Fighting for their lives. The Jade Saber and Steel Dragon scoured the moon's surface with their sensors in search of Baraxis' encampment. They didn't use the Force, for fear of being detected. They left them with the old-fashioned method, scanning the planet in hopes of finding something, anything that would lead them in the right direction. On the Jade Saber, Ami's eyes were glued to the sensors.
"I'm picking up some life forms!"
She half shouted. Anakin unbuckled his crash webbing and leaned over Ami's shoulder. "It's 200 meters to the south of our position. We gotta be cautious." Mara reached out for the comm, but the squeal of the speakers beat her to it.
"Jade Saber, this is Steel Dragon. We found them, or rather, Sek found them."
Mara nodded, setting her red locks bouncing. "Good work, Sek. Let's sit down here and go on foot." She eased up on the flight stick and set the engines to hover. As the ship descended to the sands, Mara and Ami half closed their eyes and concentrated, wielding an ornate rod into each of their hands. The ship touched down with a thud, allowing Mara to power down the engines. She and Ami unbuckled the crash webbing and, accompanied by Anakin, headed for the main cabin. They found Otaru and Lusa, or rather, they found Sailor Saturn and Sailor Chiron. Saren held out her right hand, and the glaive materialized.
We must move quickly.
Mara held out her transformation wand high and shouted, Coruscant power! Make up! Ami also held up her high side.
Victory crystal power! Make up!
A stream of blue energy wound around the young woman's body, melting her jumpsuit and reforming it into a sailor fuku with a bright blue bow in front. A maxi skirt, knee-high boots, and elbow-length gloves completed the ensemble. At the same time, a green shaft of light enveloped Mara. When it faded, she wore a sailor fuku with a green bow on front, matching ankle boots, and elbow-length gloves. I am the pre-soldier Sailor Coruscant. I will right wrongs and punish those who use the dark side. Coruscant's suddenly blinked, and her whole body steadied as he realized what she just said. She raised her hand to her temple and massaged her forehead. I need to stop with these speeches. They're driving me insane. She ran over to the control panel for the door and hit it with her palm, simultaneously opening the hatch and lowering the ramp. Chiron trotted down, followed by Anakin, Coruscant, Saturn, and Mercury. They glanced over and saw the steel dragon to their right. Sailor Dathomir, Sailor Corellia, Sailor Tatooine, Jason, and Sek all simultaneously looked over, locking eyes with their friends and family. Coruscant unclipped a lightsaber from her skirt and ignited it, sending a sapphire blade shooting forth. Let's do this, she coldly said. For love? The other Senshi finished for her. And the Force! The 10 Jedi ran up a sand dune, but all was not well. Chiron's equine legs sank to her flanks under her weight. She let out a cry and thrashed about, giving him more caught in the sand dune. A little help here! Saren turned back to her and raised her right hand, telekinetically rising Chiron from the sand.
The ground over the rise will be more compact. You'll be able to support your weight, she said. Until then, I will help you.
Chiron nodded her thanks, sending her chestnut brown locks bouncing up and down. Hallelujah. Corellia and Coruscant quickly took the lead. The younger woman looked up at her aunt and said between breaths, So, what do we do when we reach the top? The Emperor's former hand stared at the approaching top of the sand dune and quickly formulated a plan. It's simple. You and Tatooine begin firing off Corellia's starbursts and Tatooine ground cakes like there's no tomorrow. She turned and motioned at the rest of the group with her free hand. Hotaru, can you extend your silence wall around Tion and her group? Young Senshi thought for a moment.
I believe so, but it won't hold for long.
Coruscant's eyes not like that of a predator. It won't have to. Jason, Anakin, Zach. I want you three to take out any of the clones down there. Lusa, Tennoka, I have an important missive for you. She bent down and pulled her crystal shard out of a flap on her ankle boot and handed it to Dathomir. Try and figure how to fit it together and how to use it against Sim's spirit. Kyrian and Chiron handed the warrior princess their shards. Dathomir nodded. We'll find a method. That is a fact. Coruscant's eyes turned to a half smile as he regarded the young girl. That we will, Tiari. That we will. The 10 Jedi resumed their running up the dune, reaching the summit in 2 minutes and cresting at the top. Coruscant looked down just in time to see all hell break loose. She rolled her green eyes and sighed at her husband.
Oh, guess he don't need our help after all.
Okay, guys, let's think about this. We have 10 Jedi, Sailor Jedi, standing on top of a sand dune, looking down as a fierce battle is happening. You cannot possibly get more epic than that! Well, okay, maybe you could. Maybe if you added a lightsaber glowing and maybe a freaking Enterprise flying up in the breeze, but... Oh, and hair blowing in a fierce breeze. Tamis Kai chuckled as Baraxis ready to kill her below. With Skywalker dead, the entire Jedi Order would crumble without their leader within months. She gripped the time staff as Baraxis built up a charge. Suddenly, a multicolored blur appeared in front of her, startling her. Before she could react, Setsuna grabbed her time staff back. This is not a toy! She snarled, swinging at Tamis Kai's head. Tamis simultaneously raised her arms in an attempt to block the object and leaned back, doubling over as her gauntlet lance put the time staff away. Night Sister somersaulted back and landed in a crouch, hands already up front. How did you get free? The Guardian of Time held it in her hand and concentrated. The transformation wand appeared in it. She spoke. The Force is my ally, as is Master Skywalker. She then held the ornate rod high and shouted, "Put out crystal power! Make up!" At the same time, Bryces was still raining his killer blow. Before he could deliver it, he gasped as two incredibly strong, incredibly hairy arms were wrapped around him and squeezed. His blue eyes bugged out as Lily lifted up on the ground, roaring. His armor even began to groan and strain as Lily's powerful, force-enhanced embrace cracked it open. He snarled, and let his anger build before letting loose Sith lightning. The blue-white bolt streamed around Lily, causing him to drop Bryces and reel back in pain. His fur smoked, and MTD's vocalizer sent out static. Luke raced towards his friend, lightsaber ignited at the ready. Bryces turned to Luke and smirked. "Sorry, Master, but you've got a meeting with Daddy Dearest first." Luke skidded to a stop and felt a prickly sensation crawl up his spine. He turned and raised his lightsaber, the green plasma blade meeting up with Anakin's blood-red energy blade. Luke parried it down and stepped back. "I don't want to fight you," he pleaded. "Father!" Anakin stepped forward and wordlessly attacked, ignoring Luke's plea. He feinted a stab and brought the blade up high, nearly decapitating Luke. The clone's ice-blue eyes bored into Luke, while an expression of confidence across his face. "You're weak, son. I can take you any time." Luke deftly blocked a side chop, then sent Anakin back with a series of thrusts and overhead swings. "I may not want to fight you, but I will in order to protect that which I hold most dear." Jason and Anakin, meanwhile, ran down the stone dune, kicking up clouds of dust on the way. Both stopped at the bottom and looked around, checking out the situation in Anakin's case. The hostages were already free and battling the clones, Temizkat or Baraxis. A lot better than he expected. Anakin suddenly looked to the left and shouted, "Duck!" while rolling to his side. Jason turned to his younger brother with a look on his face. "What's a duck?" His brown eyes went wide as he saw a boot flying towards his face. "Oh, bless her. Oh, look, it's a space duck!" The calf impacted the left side of his face, breaking his cheekbone in two places and slicing open his ear. He fell to the ground like a sack of bricks, twitching and groaning in pain. Anakin's eyes widened in horror as Kip Duron stood there with a malicious grin plastered on his face. He didn't realize he had activated his lightsaber until he saw the blue blade. The clone of Kip also held a lightsaber in range position. He swung at Anakin in a deceptively lazy arc, handing Anakin's blade and forcing it into a downward spin. Anakin held out his hand and telekinetically shoved Duron back, knocking the clone back a bit and knocking the wind out of him. The clone quickly rolled out of the way, milliseconds before Anakin's blue blade came to slice his head off. Duron roared, swinging the lightsaber at Anakin. The two quickly lost themselves as their battle waged. Sailor Dathomir carefully approached the wizened form of Gesseron. She gripped her turquoise-colored lightsaber, pointing at the old crone. "You corrupted the women of Dathomir. It turned them to the dark side. I can't forgive you for that. In the name of the Force, I shall punish you." Gesseron turned her red, bloodshot eyes upon the young woman. "Insolent rep, do you think you could beat me?" She casually raised a bony arm and fired off a stream of lightning at Dathomir, not even bothering or caring. Dathomir raised her arms and shouted, "Happen wall of protection!" all forming a glass bubble around her, deflecting the lightning from her body to the ground. As soon as the lightning ceased, she lifted up her Gesseron and slung her blade at the Night Sister's head with a mighty yell. The old crone gasped and quickly held her hand up, erecting a telekinetic barrier between her head and Dathomir's blade. The plasma blade skidded against the visible wall, and Dathomir then twisted in the air before landing back at Gesseron. She twisted around just as the old cone raised her knobby arm and sent out a stream of Sith lightning. Sailor Dathomir brought her turquoise saber alight and concentrated, causing the lightning to flow into the blade harmlessly. Gesseron raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. We appear to be at a stalemate." Dathomir nodded. "That is, unfortunately, a fact." She assumed an offensive martial arts stance. "It's also a fact I won't give up." Gesseron smiled, showing off a mouthful of yellow, rotted teeth. "Neither will I, child." Sparks danced around her fingertips as she spoke. "Neither will I." Sailors Coruscant and Corellia approached the last of the clones. Corellia and Sarah Sana, Luna, Tion, as they ran up to the dune and away from the clones, and both breathed a sigh of relief. They soon joined up with Tion, Zek, Saturn, Tyra, and Mercury. "Stand back!" Coruscant shouted. She turned and spotted the final clone heading toward the pair. His living armor pulsed as he spoke. So, a failed Darksider and a trainee are going to stop me. Do you even know who I am? Coruscant's eyes narrowed as she stared at him. She gasped as an image from long ago formed in her mind. Palpatine stood before a large statue. His head turned slightly to his right, and he glanced down at a small girl. Do you know what this is? The girl stared up at the imposing stone statue. Her head tilting, and longish red hair fell over.
It's Darth Bane, the first of the new Lords of the Sith. He started the rule of two 1,000 years ago.
Palpatine smiled, somehow causing him to look even more evil. Excellent, my hand. He grasped the girl's shoulder and began leading her down a large corridor. Statues and paintings of other Sith Lords lined the expansive hallway. Now we shall begin your education and your duties. Coruscant gritted her teeth and slid down the sand dune, sending a cloud of dust in her wake. She ignited her saber halfway down, jumped up at the bomb, and swung it at Darth Bane's head as soon as he reached him. Bane leaned back, allowing the lightsaber to pass harmlessly over his bald head. He thrust his arms into the air and quickly gathered his power, while Coruscant readied another attack. After a few seconds, Corellia joined with her in attacking Bane, but he managed to barely dodge her as well. The first of the new Lords of the Sith waited until both Senshi were ranged. Then he thrust his arms out and punched each one right in the ribcage, while simultaneously released a massive amount of dark side energy through his gauntleted hands. The point of contact flashed briefly before Corellia and Coruscant cried out and were flung back. The blast drove Corellia into the sand, burning her chest. She tried to get up, but slid down, clutching the point of impact. Coruscant also slammed down into the sand dune like a rag doll. It was quickly relented unconscious. Bane let out a snort of laughter. Nothing can stop me. I am invincible. At the top of the sand dune, Mercury and Saturn looked down at Bane. They, along with Tatooine, Zek, Luna, and Chiron, form a sort of reserve force. Mercury's blue eyes flashed as she saw Bane hit her friends with dark side energy. She raised her arms and pointed her lightsaber at him. Shine, Aqua Risen! A stream of wiry energy began flowing around the blade before shooting off at Bane. He raised his arms and crossed them in front of his chest. A crystalline barrier in front of him, deflecting almost all of the wire. A little bit slid through, though, however, and hit him in the chest, freezing the Orbalisk armor and killing several of the symbiotes. He flaked off, leaving Bane's chest fireable. Sharon raised her sun's glaive to narrow her eyes, concentrating on all the blades of her weapon before shouting, Death Reborn Revolution! Twin streams of rainbow-colored energy shot off from the glowing blades, streaking out and hitting Bane's shield. They skittered across the barrier before breaking through, skewering Bane right through the chink in his armor. Blood leaked out from his mouth as his internal organs were perforated, and he dropped down to the ground, dead before reaching the sand. Saturn looked down at the corpse and suppressed a shudder of revulsion.
I hate doing that. Sometimes I hate my power.
Mercury nodded and patted her on the shoulder.
Killing is never right, but it is a necessary evil.
She looked over at the areas of combat, scanning with trained eyes. Then she looked down at Sailor Coruscant and Sailor Corellia. The former had finally regained consciousness, and the latter was trying to stand. Sailor Chiron, who was standing just behind Mercury and Tatooine, trotted over to the pair. Mercury looked at the young centaur and said,
Lusa, check up on Mistress Jade. I'll take Jaina.
She then looked over at Sailor Tatooine.
Watch for anything suspicious.
She then slid down the sand dune towards Sailor Corellia. At the same time, Chiron skidded down to Coruscant. Mercury stopped in front of her friend, tugged on her ear, and the blue-tinted visor swept across her equally blue eyes. Her mini-computer materialized in her hands as she scanned the still groggy Corellia.
Did we win?
Mercury shook her head.
No, he nearly killed you. As a matter of fact, that force blast broke 3 of your ribs.
She touched the broken areas, sending healing energy through the force. Corellia groaned as he fought to remain standing. Doesn't matter. We've got to stop Zim's spirit. Mercury shook her head.
No, you have to finish.
She stopped talking as Corellia grabbed her by the collar and spoke through gritted teeth. No way! I am a Jedi Knight and a Sailor Senshi. A few broken ribs won't slow me down. Besides, Aunt Maro's probably hit worse than I was, and look at her! Mercury turned her head and saw Sailor Coruscant standing a few meters away. Sarah Charon was tending to a few of her wounds, but the older woman appeared all right. Mercury turned back to her friend.
If you think you're all right, I won't stop you.
Cornelia flashed Mercury a trademark solo grin, but as soon as he turned away, a grimace of pain slipped over her face. Sailor Coruscant checked her Sailor Fuku and found nothing out of place. Although her back hurt, she didn't feel any other pain. Chiron scanned her through the force and through observation. Other than a bump on the head and some abrasions to the back, you seem fine. The redheaded Senshi looked over at the various battles going on. We can't stand around. We've got to do something! She glanced over at Mercury and Cornelia and motioned them over. At the same time, Second Tian led Sana, Luna, Saturn, and Tatooine down the sand dune. Zack looked over at Chase's prone form. I gotta get to him. The door enclosed dangerous, and I don't know how long Anakin can last. Coruscant nodded and looked over. She saw Lily trying to crawl away from the duel between Luke and Anakin Skywalker and Baraxis. Luke, get Lusa, get that Wookiee! That sentence should not be uttered that often. Sailor Chiron looked over the battlefield and saw the lanky Wookiee crawling away from the fights. His fur was burned in several areas, and his brown eyes had a glassy look about him. Rah! She shouted before making her way across the battlefield. Sailor Tatooine, meanwhile, dug out her crystal shard from a pocket in her uniform. I think we better figure out how to use this. Any ideas? Sana pointed at Tamika and Sailor Pluto. Both were lurked in a dance of death, as Pluto parried and blocked the Night Sister's thrust and thrust.
The thoughtful witch has our crystal swords as well as Tion, Lily, and Setsuna's lightsabers.
She snarled. Her yellow eyes bore holes into Tamika, but the Night Sister paid no heed. Tiyun closed her silvery eyes and concentrated. Her Tanceration wand appeared in her right hand. Sana, she said, looking down at the small melody. We better transform. The young girl sighed, but held out her right hand. She closed her pale little eyes and concentrated. After a second, an ornate rod appeared in her hand. She and Tion held out their hands to the sky and shouted, Yama Power! Make up!
Narrative power, make up!
Anakin struggled as Duran pressed this attack. The clone's green eyes danced with an eternal fire, and his mouth slightly ajar. The tow-headed Solo knew that this wasn't the slightly vain but guilty Jedi Master he had grown to respect. This clone was everything Kip Duran rejected. This was the Butcher Karida. This was Kip under the thrall of Exar Kun Sade. This was Kip Duran, completely insane. And Anakin had no criffin idea what to do. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted Zack hurrying over to get Jason. Now here's my question. Why do I keep getting Kip confused with Kyle Katarn? Duran caught the motion of his eye and raised his left hand, pointing at the former Dark Jedi. Blue-white bolts of Sith lightning leapt from his hand and shot at Zack. The lanky young man looked up and flashed ignited his lightsaber. A red orange blade sprang to existence, just in time to intercept the bolts of pure evil. Sparks erupted, and he pursed his lips in concentration. Suddenly, Duran stumbled back a few steps as Zack force-shoved him. The little tap didn't hurt the clone, but it did give Zack enough time to hoist Jason onto his left shoulder in a fireman's carry. Jason's brandy-colored eyes fluttered open. Ugh, did we win? He said groggily. Zack sighed as he hot-footed across the dry desert floor. Sorry, but you'll have to sit this one out. He quickly made his way back to his group. Anakin quickly took advantage of Zack's distraction. He pressed the attack, shoving Duran back with another force push. The clone lost his grip on his lightsaber and fell onto his backside. Anakin ran over and destroyed the clone's lightsaber with a deft flick of his wrist. Then moved his wrist slightly and held the blue-bladed lightsaber 2 centimeters from his clone's chin. I don't think I have to tell you what a superheated plasma blade can do to human flesh, he said with a madly calm voice. Clone's eyes went wide, and a snarl formed on his lip. He let out a wordless yell and sat up, impaling his throat on Anakin's blade. The clone's eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he slid off the lightsaber's blade, carving out a little more of his throat. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber and let the hilt slip from his suddenly numb fingers. He stepped back even as the hilt landed in the sand. He produced a small cloud of dust. A look of total shock was plastered over his face as he mumbled, I didn't mean to do that. He stepped back and bumped into Sailor Saturn. The young woman looked into Anakin's troubled eyes, sensing his doubt and uncertainty, and sadness over Clone's death.
Anakin, he didn't do anything wrong. He killed himself.
The two friends made their way back to the reserves. It was still disturbing, and it was still my blade. Sarah looked back at the hilt laying in the sand. She raised her free hand and levitated into her outstretched hand and looked over at her best friend.
Doesn't matter. He killed himself. You have nothing to be guilty over. Besides, Master Skywalker said that we can't redeem these clones.
Anakin mulled Sarah's words as he raced her friends. Jason was laying on the ground and being tended to by Sacred Mary.
He'll live, but we'll have to have his jaw fired shut for a week.
Sarah Corey let out a mocking sigh of relief. Does that mean no jokes? Oh, joy. Jason slowly raised himself using his elbows. He opened his mouth, but only a garbled pain came out. Mary touched his forehead and put him into a light healing trance. The blue-haired genius stood up and spoke to Coruscant.
Have you figured anything out?
Coruscant shook her head. They're too small for our hands. It's like trying to hold on to water. They keep slipping out. Sarah Melody glanced over at Pluto and Time of Ka, still fighting.
We still need those crystal salts too. Without them, we're stuck with a penny bauble and nothing more.
Sarah Yavin, who's been watching the battle, suddenly tossed her bowed head over her shoulders. I'm giving Setsuna a hand, she said, clenching a fist, and before anyone could object, Sarah Yavin sprinted across the desert floor. Time of Ka swung her lightsaber at Pluto. The Light Sister was consumed with rage, as the Senshi deftly blocked her attacks with that damn time staff of hers. The Guardian of the Time Gate spun around for a parry. Her dark green, almost black hair sweeping out from her body, as he jabbed Time of Ka in her armored gut with the staff. The Night Sister fell to the ground, but she quickly regained her footing and attacked Pluto with a staff to the gut. Pluto let the force flow through her as he blocked Time of Ka's stab. The blade skidded along the time staff, setting up a shower of sparks that momentarily blinded both combatants. When Pluto's vision cleared, she saw a good friend standing behind Time of Ka, Sarah Yavin. A glance down confirmed that the lightsaber had the crystal shards on her left belt. 3 stolen lightsabers were also there, jangling and bouncing to the heat of battle. Pluto parried the blood lightsaber down and, with some help from the Force, spun Time of Ka around and shouted, Naltion! Sarah Yavin, standing at the ready, lashed onto Time of Ka's belt with the Force and yanked with all her might. The dried leather staff quickly ripped off and sailed right into Yavin's hand. With one smooth motion, she unclipped her lightsaber and flung the belt over her shoulder and activated her silver-colored lightsaber. Now you see the true power of the Force, Sarah Yavin said, posing somewhat.
Hey, this is kind of fun.
She then thrust her blade at Time of Ka, who could now only dodge the attack. She rolled to her right and got to one knee before Sarah Yavin was upon her. Time of Ka blocked an incoming strike, and the two became locked in a test of strength, their blades straining against one another. The Night Sister's arms muscles bulged as she, over a period of 5 minutes, fought to a standing position. I will not lose to address the Jedi! Her purple eyes bulged with hate, and with a final burst of strength, pushed the silver Senshi off. She raised her left hand, and sparks were running from her gloved hand. I'm going to enjoy watching you fry. Her taser set suddenly flared, not like a shiver up her spine. She looked to her left and saw Pluto standing there, the top of her time staff levied at her. Detto scream, she whispered, releasing a torrent of energy from the ancient weapon. It slammed to Time of Ka, disintegrating the Night Sister's flesh and blowing her flaming corpse into the side of a sand dune, where it lay there, smoldering. Yavin's silver eyes went wide as her mouth dropped as he witnessed Time of Ka's fiery death. Widow sensed her shock and walked over to her. She placed her hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, but there was no other way. She would have killed you if she had the chance. Yavin nodded. She stifled her gathering reflex as she said, I know. It was still such a shame. She quickly opened the brown satchel that held the crystal shards lit inside. We better get this back so we can figure out how to assemble this weapon Padme told us about. Pluto looked around, her gaze slipping over to the other bowels raging. We better hurry. The two quickly made their way back to the group. Sarah Yavin met up with Coruscant, handing over the satchel with crystal shards. There, now then, what's our plan? Cornelius tried. Tennoka's got the final shard. We need it before we can start figuring out how to assemble this thing. She looked over and saw the Senshi of balance fighting against the Night Sister Genseron. Daphomir's body twisted in midair as she dodged at multiple blasts of sapphire lightning. She landed on her high-heeled clad feet and spun around to confront her opponent. As soon as the white boot ceased, She looked at Gesseron and swung her turquoise lightsaber at the crone heads with a mighty roar. Gesseron held up one of her wrinkled old hands and muttered an incantation. As soon as the plasma blade came to a few centimeters of her head, an invisible barrier appeared and deflected Daphomir's strike. "We appear to be at an impasse, young one," she said as Dathomir somersaulted and landed. "I cannot attack while defending, and the same is true for you. We simply go now and spare yourself the pain." Dathomir shook her head, shedding her reddish like to a whirlwind. "No, I won't give up. You willingly gave yourself to the dark side. You remain unrepentant for the near destruction of our home world." She pointed her lightsaber at Gesseron. "It is a fact that you must be punished, in the name of the Force!" Gesseron snarled, showing rotted yellow teeth. "Fool! I'll smash you into the desert!" She reached out with the Force, and attempted to telekinetically grab Sailor Dathomir. Then Senshi felt the grab, and distinctly raised her arms in front of her. "Husband, roll of protection!" she shouted. A glassy bubble formed around her, and she felt Gesseron's Force grab dissipate. She held up the shield with one hand, pointing at the Night Sister with the other. "Dathomir Heat Wave." A bluish fire surrounded her gloved right hand, and a tongue of flame lit up the night saber. Gesseron's blooded eyes went wide as he saw the flames race toward her. As he attempted to right the Force barrier, but the flame quickly engulfed her wrinkled hand, quickly traveled up her robed arm, engulfing her in flames. Gesseron didn't even have time to scream, as her body was reduced to ash in seconds, and was scattered by the wind. Dathomir turned, and quickly tried to her friend some ways away. She jogged over, but when she saw Jason lying on the ground, she immediately broke into a run. "Jason! My friend! What happened?" she frantically asked when she reached the group. Mercury looked up from tending to him.
"He was kicked in the face by a clone of Master Duron. He'll heal, but you'll have to be wire shut."
Sailor Corellia, who was talking to Sailor Melody, looked over. "Yeah,
"But at least we won't have to hear any jokes for a bit,"
she said in a teasing voice. At Jason's groan, she looked down at him. "Oh, you know I was kidding. Sort of." The redheaded Senshi shrugged. "I like Jason's jokes. They amuse me." She then glanced up, and her jaw dropped at the sight of the last duel. Luke was fighting not only Baraxis, but a clone of Anakin Skywalker, with Sarah Coruscant standing off to the side. Her emerald eyes focused on the bow to the exclusion of all else. Dathomir ran to her. "Mistress Jade, may I ask why you aren't helping Master Skywalker?" Coruscant spoke to Dathomir, eyes not leaving the duel. "Before leaving the fight, Luke sent me a message through the Force. Stay out unless I fall." She suddenly looked over at Dathomir, but her eyes met the nape of Dathomir's neck. She looked up at Parcel's neck.
"She's my height? When did that happen?"
"For Luke, this fight is even more personal than when Baraxis called Obi-Wan," she said, looking back. "I can only hope he can keep his emotions in check. A Skywalker gone dark side could be very dangerous." Luke fought. He fought Baraxis. He fought the clone of his father. Most of all, he fought the urge to simply give in to his hate and loathing of this situation. Do you people see why I think Luke is the chosen one and not little pansy-waist Anakin? Look at him, fighting Baraxis, fighting Anakin, and barely and holding on, not giving in to his hatred. This is Luke freaking Skywalker, and he is the boss! His emerald blade flashed as he first parried a slash from Anakin, then turned on his heel and kicked Baraxis in the gut. His danger sense screamed as he black-flipped, just as Anakin's red blade went to bisect him. He followed through, tumbling back and rolling as soon as he hit the sand. His blade instinctively went up, just as Baraxis ran forward, his red-colored blade crashing down. He concentrated and shoved his forward steward with the Force, pushing him back and sending him flying. Anakin's eyes sparkled as he sneered. "Excellent. Let the hate grow in you, Luke. Let it control and dominate you, like it did me." Luke shook his head. "No, I won't give in. The light side is stronger." Anakin snarled, slung at Luke. "Why? Don't you listen?" The Talhead Jedi Master blocked the first Titan's strikes. Then pushed with the Force that last one hit, throwing Anakin off balance, allowing him to stab at Anakin's robed form. His green-bladed lightsaber sliced into Anakin's tunic, leaving a shallow cut along the ribcage. Cullen yelped in pain, his eyes bulging slightly. He ran his left hand across the rune, staining it red. He held it up, looked upon his own blood. His eyes went a little wild. Suddenly, he yelled and charged at Luke. The Jedi Master stood firm as the code of his father slashed wildly and thrust his blade. Anakin had now fully given himself over to the dark side. It was soon lust and battle lust. Luke blocked an overhead swing and smoothly parried it out position, never losing his cool. He then stabbed at Anakin, who barely had enough sense left to dodge. Luke's wrist flicked to his left, and his green blade sliced through Anakin's lightsaber hilt above the thumb. The emitter plate went flying into the sand, and sparks poured out of the ruined hilt. Anakin shouted, and dropped the ruined hilt seconds before the power cell exploded in a puff of smoke. By now, Barisis had recovered from Luke's force shove. The armor-clad Sith Lord stumbled over just as Anakin's lightsaber was destroyed, and shouted, "Do something, you idiot!" Anakin abruptly turned around and grabbed Barisis by his collar. "Idiot? Who are you calling an idiot? I destroyed the Jedi Order. What have you done?" Barisis snarled. Luke forgot for a moment. "No. Darth Vader destroyed the Chosen One. You are a clone of him." Anakin's blue eyes bored into Barisis. His face became a stunning mask. He raised his right fist and clenched it. "And I have all his memories, fool!" Bryce's eyes bulged as he felt his white windpipe constrict. Response as he was denied life-giving oxygen, and he caught at his throat. Anakin stepped forward, even as Bryce dropped his lightsaber and sank to one knee. "I am the Chosen One. You are an amateur." You know, I have a lot of debate about that. Luke sensed what Anakin was doing. "Stop! Father!" he shouted, holding up his hand. "Please, I beg you!" Anakin turned his head to Luke, and a sad smile scratched his lip. "Sorry, but like Bryce has said, I am not your father." You don't know how often I've been waiting to say a line like that. Luke ran to his side, and Anakin pushed him away. As Bryce's fist turned black, he telekinetically leapt onto his deactivated lightsaber with the Force. Anakin's switch was turned on, and he tried to levitate the red blade right into Luke's chest. Anakin's eyes flickered as he sensed the danger a fragment second before Luke. It instantaneously fell to the side and took the blade right in his chest. Luke screamed, grabbed the lightsaber, and pulled the energy blade from Anakin. But it was too late. He was gently lowered to clone to the ground. "Praxis must be stopped," Anakin gasped out. His blue eyes clouded over, and a small stream of blood trickled from his mouth. "I'm so sorry," Luke gasped out. I'm sorry." Its vents clenched again, as other feelings of impotence here. Anakin let out a peaceful smile directly across his face. "Don't be. You saved me again." With that, Anakin Skywalker died once more. As Anakin fell, Baraxis rose. The last of the Sith levitated his lightsaber to his right hand and sneered. "Told him he was an idiot." Luke rocked back a bit, clenching Anakin's corpse. His eyes shut tightly as he screamed, "No!" Bryce looked over, just as Luke's green blade slashed at his head. He quickly backpedaled as Luke slashed, thrust, and swung at him. Pure fury was etched on Luke's normally serene face. Bryce knew he had made a fatal error. Quickly began speaking, words during the battle. "Luke, I'm sorry. Please don't get me. Please don't get me. Please don't get me. I'm sorry. Please don't get me. I'm sorry." He tripped over his own feet and fell back. He quickly scrambled to his feet, only to come eyeball to blade with Luke's emerald-colored lightsaber. Luke snarled at Bryce. "Give me the sword." He growled through clenched teeth. The cowering Sith Lord unseated the ancient sword from a scabbard on his back. With a trembling hand, gave it to Luke. Luke struck the sword into the ground, then mechanically turned to Bryce. Just as he was about to kill him, a voice sounded over the desert, bringing him back almost. "Luke! Don't give in to the hate! Isn't that what you taught me?" He turned around and saw Sarah Coruscant, or rather, Mara J. Skywalker, transformed back from her Senshi disguise. The former Emperor's hand held out her arms and spoke to her husband. "Luke, I agree that Barisis is a snivelling little dog, but you can't kill him like this. To strike him down in such a matter would send you to the dark side. It would eventually pit you against me." Her voice took on a plaintive tone as he walked over to the Jedi Master. "I love you, and I don't want to see you fall into the same trap that you helped me climb out of." Luke looked down to his right and saying, "You're right." He deactivated his lightsaber and clipped it to his belt before turning to Bryce. "Bryce, you're not going to escape justice that easily." Bryce got to his knees, then slowly to his feet. "Oh, but I think I will. With a burst of telekinesis, he grabbed onto the sword of Sith and pulled it to him. The blade flew to his right hand and held it up high, resisting the urge to say, I have the power by the power of Grayskull. A maniacal smile bloomed across his face as he said, Now, I will rule forever! He swung the sword at Luke's head, but he ducked and quickly moved out of Alexis' reins. Mara's right arm came up, and a blaster pistol tucked away in her sleeve shot into her hand. She took aim and fired a bolt at Brax's head. The Sith Lord reacted with lightning speed and instinctively brought the sword up. The bolt of superheated plasma struck the ancient weapon dead on and fractured the blade. Bits of steel exploded from the impact point, and the tip paled and impaled itself onto the sandy ground. Luke's eyes went wide in horror, and Mara dropped her blaster in shock. Before she could speak, Luke turned his head towards her. Transform! Now! He began sounding instructions to the others. Ollie, Setsuna, Hotaru, prepare for battle! The rest of you, assemble that crystal! Francis, meanwhile, looked at the ruined weapon and shook his head. It's ruined. Now, I'll never rule. 5 seconds later, the hilt and the partially buried tip began glowing a dazzling white. He held the wooden hilt away from his armored-clad body, but his fingers simply won't let go. What's going on? He asked. A look of terror and despair washed over his face, approximately 3 seconds before his soul was destroyed. Chapter 11. Sailor Jedi, unite! Guardians, unite. Mara quickly held out her right hand and concentrated. Her transformation wand appeared in it, as he held it to the sky while shouting, Coruscant power! Make up! A green shaft of light surrounded her, and her clothes melted and reformed into a Sailor Fuku with a green bow on front and matching short skirt. Ankle boots and elbow-length gloves completed the ensemble. For love and justice, I am the pre-Sailor Soldier, Sailor Coruscant! She reflectively said, striking a pose and not even caring. When Mara transformed, energy built up within the sword's remains. Luke shouted out to his former student, Braxis, toss that hilt away from you! Braxis' eyes turned upon his former master. Don't you think Lightning like bolts of energy suddenly erupted from the broken ends of the hilt, and the tip, before he could finish, struck Braxis in his eyes, flowing in. The hilt clattered to the ground, as Braxis was consumed by something evil, not meant to be released. His mouth dropped open in a soundless scream, as Zim the Cesspot's soul poured into his body, consuming his soul in the blink of an eye, and filling the void left. Luke partially shielded his eyes, but he couldn't fully turn away. Sailor Mercury, Sailor Pluto, and Sailor Saturn walked up to the Jedi Master, flanking him.
That soul is pure evil,
Saturn said. She leveled her silence glaive at the writhing body.
We must end it quickly.
Pluto nodded and tapped the ground with her staff. If he leaves this moon, civilized nation as you know it will fall. Mercury raised her lightsaber and spread her feet out.
Now let's make sure it stays put.
After a few minutes, the energy bolts streaming from the two parts of the sword ceased, and they stopped glowing. Braxis blinked his eyes rapidly, but the color was no longer blue. Instead, the entire orb was colored orange with streaks of red throughout. Luke scanned the armor-clad figure, but could find no trace of Braxis' soul. All that was left was the yawning pit known as Zim the Despot, tyrant of the galaxy. Braxis, I'm sorry. Zim cracked his back and stretched. His legs were a little wobbly, but soon he gained steadiness. It has been too long since I had flesh. He turned his eyes upon Luke and the Sailor Senshi. So, you think you have a chance against me? Pluto raised her time staff and pointed at Zim and whispered 2 words. Deta, scream. Fanfic, what have I been telling you about the rules of Sailor Moon fanfiction? Another rule is you can't have somebody being awesome as a villain. They've all got to want the Sensei's bodies, and they've all got to be less than awesome. They all got to be wimps, and they all got to be a bunch of losers. You can't have an awesome villain like this. No. Stop this, Vic. You're making me love you. Sailor Cornelius' fingers grasped the 2 crystal shards. She squinted on and focused on them as they tried to fit together. One shard suddenly slipped from her fingertips and plummeted to the sands. Blaster bolts! She swore. Sailor Humanity bled down and picked up the dropped shard, lifted a sparkly bauble with her pale yellow eyes.
This is pointless, she said, sighing. We can't fit this thing together, and sooner or later Sim's gonna get tired of playing with our friends. Then he'll come play with us. The Senshi looked down at Luna. Do you have any ideas on how to fit this thing together? The small cat approximated a shrug. Unfortunately, no. I'm afraid this is outside my area of expertise. Courier groaned. Well, I'm open to suggestions. Anyone got any ideas here? Sarah Tatooine looked over at the Balbine waves. Maybe we don't even need a crystal. We're all powerful in our own right, and if we combine with Ami, Setsu, and Hotaru, we'll be unbeatable. She glanced over his report, but Anakin shook his head. No, I'm not a Senshi, but even I know you'll need that crystal. His blue eyes looked over at the miniature war being waged a few meters away. And if you don't assemble it soon, Luke, Ami, Setsu, and Hotaru won't need anything, ever again. A spear of unearthly, immensely powerful energy thundered towards them while Mercury cupped her hands together. A spear of white light formed in it. Sabine! She said as the spear grew. After a half second, she uncupped her hands and flung the spear at Sim. Spray! The brilliant white light flew apart and released a blinding fog. Sim held up his right hand, and Pluto's dead scream stopped in midair.
Interesting. This is similar to the attacks launched at me 25,500 years ago.
As he spoke, Mercury's spoon spray filled him in a century-dappering fog.
These techniques, however, are more refined and powerful.
He made a pushing motion with his hand, suddenly the violent spear lurching away.
I see you.
Okay, now I know I've complained about this before, but again, here's the reason why I'm not. First off, he's already said that the Senshi's attacks are powerful, so he's not insulting them. I'm good with that. Second, this is a very powerful final boss type of bad guy. I'm not expecting the Senshi to be able to one-hit him. No, this is going to require strength, skill, and cunning. And thus, this is far more better for the drama and doesn't make the Senshi look weak.
Pluto snarled, showing an uncharacteristically large amount of emotion. Sarah and Luke, meanwhile, left into the fog. So neither could see. Their ability to sense things in the Force was actually magnified, allowing them to hold in on Zim. Luke's emerald blade flashed as he unclipped it, ignited, and swung at Zim's head in one fluid motion. Sarah's glaive also swung. Its target was Zim's midsection. If it were anyone else standing there, they would be dead. Luke blinked, and his eyes snapped back open. He saw a hazy red blade blocking his own green one. He could sense frustration building in Saturn. The young girl sat as he saw Zim's gauntleted hand actually caught to silence Glade's blades. That's impossible! Zim shrugged.
Nothing is impossible. With the exception of you beating me.
Outside the fog, Mercury and Pluto stood by. Blue-tinted visor wrapped around Mercury's eyes as he scanned Zim.
His power control over the Force is almost unreal!
Pluto shook her head, hair flowing behind her. He was beaten once. He could be beaten again! Without warning, Mercury's fog dissipated. Both Senshi gasped in horror as they saw Zim lance onto Luke with the Force and drive him into the sand dune. The Ice Master's body impacted the wall of sand and flew through it, exiting and flying another 10 meters before scattering into a halt, leaving a half-meter trench in his wake. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled to get her weapon out of Zim's clutches. The Lord of the Dark Side had somehow grabbed onto the sides of one of the blades, leaving a millimeter's of distance between his gauntleted hand and the inventively sharp edge of the glaive. Sparks danced around Zim's right arm and hand. Within seconds, he poured a massive amounts of Sith lightning into Sarah's submissive frame. The young woman cried out in pain as convulsions racked her body. Pluto's green eyes went wide as she shouted, "Gentle! Scream!" A maelstrom of energy erupted from the head of the time staff, coalesced before firing, striking Zim's body. He shouted and let go of Sarah before stumbling back a few paces and regaining his balance. The attack destroyed his torso armor, burned his skin. But otherwise, he was undamaged. Oh, that is so cheating! Shatter, on the other hand, had burns all up her arms. She also shook uncontrollably from the shock. 10 meters away, Luke slowly regained consciousness and used the Force to heal himself. Zim looked at his opponents.
Now I face the Guardian of Time and the smartest human ever.
He smiled, sending up a chill both Mercury and Pluto's spine. He raised his arms and pointed his two closed fists at the pair. Dark energies built up in them. His gloved hands glowed. After a few seconds, He released twin beams of raw, destructive energy straight into two Senshi. Puto raced her time strap and desperately sighed, Dark Dome, close! An invisible barrier descended over her and Mercury a mere half second before the twin beams reached their target, protecting them for now. Zim gritted his teeth and channeled more power into the beams, knowing the beads of sweat forming on Puto's head. You can't last forever, Zim said in a mocking voice. When that barrier dies, you die. Mercury raided her lightsaber.
You'll be the one to die, Zim.
A blue glow enveloped her gloved hands. She pointed her blue-bladed lightsaber at the Dark Lord and shouted,
Shine, Aqua Illusion!
The energy swirled around the lightsaber's blade and straight towards Zim. His orange eyes flashed as his left hand stopped emitting energy. He began projecting a barrier around him, stopping Mercury's attack.
We'll never give up, Zim.
Zim's mouth turns upward in a grim smile.
Good. I enjoy a good fight.
Tatooine watched the standoff a bit before turning back, and an excited voice spoke.
Okay, we need ideas, now!
She held up her crystal shard and waved it about.
If we don't put this together soon, we are dead! Does anyone have any ideas at all?
Dephomir's brows furrowed in thought for a second. Our hands cannot grasp them in gloves. What if we remove the gloves? Her right hand grabbed the cuff of the elbow length, covering her left arm, and began peeling off the glove, only to stop abruptly when she reached just below her elbow. As below her stump lay the white globule of energy. She hastily pulled her glove back on, as the traces of panic showed in her eyes.
I don't believe that is an option, she said. Really not an option.
Cordelia glanced at her own arms and thought,
I'm not really sure that's the case for us, but I don't want to find out.
Everyone else murmured in agreement with her, leaving them back at square one. Sailor Melody and Sailor Tyra wandered over, enjoying Tatooine and watching the battle. Sailor Puto and Mercury were locked in a stalemate with Zim the Despot. Puto had her tam staff up high and was preventing the Dark Clone to close, while Mercury fired off a continuous stream of Psynock on illusion. Zim, meanwhile, deflected Mercury's watery blast with one hand and was pounding up Puto's shield with an energy stream from the other. Sweat beaded slightly on his brow, but a sick sneer was on his face. Suddenly, he dropped his right hand as a black and green blur appeared at his elbow. Mercury grasped his side.
That's Skywalker's all right,
she said, stopped firing, in fear of hitting him. Sure enough, Luke Skywalker stood to Zim's right. He had a long gash across his forehead, caked with dried blood, as well as other cuts and bruises along his back, where he impacted a sand dune. None of that mattered as he engaged Zim. Zim regarded the great Jedi Master.
Impressive. But if you think you've won, you've got the wrong idea.
A bright lightsaber appeared in his right hand, while his left hand continued to deflect Mercury's attack. You gotta admit, that looks awesome. Pluto quickly lowered her time staff and dropping the shield. She then pointed to the top of her talisman at Zim and sighed, Master Skywalker, move! Luke glanced over at Pluto, scooped a Sailor Saturn, and backflipped out of the line of fire. Pluto let a faint smile across her lips as he whispered, Little scream. She channeled almost all of her energy into the dead scream. A rolling spear of purple energy shot at Zim. He screamed as he saw the attack coming his way. He quickly raised his left hand. A translucent barrier formed a half-meter from his gloved hands, strengthening his barrier just as the dead scream impacted with the force of a turbo laser shot. Zim's boots dug into the sand as sheer kinetic energy forced him back. His barrier wavered even as Pluto's attack burned through it, layer by layer. Finally, the attack exploded in a brilliant flash of light, engulfing him. Pluto, Mercury, and Luke shielded their eyes, but as the light faded, all three groaned as they saw Zim still there. His gloves were burned away. His hands and forearms were moderately burned. He wheezed continuously, his orange eyes bugged out from exhaustion. He looked up and smiled, sending chills down everyone's spines.
That was fun.
He then raised his already healing arms.
My turn.
Sailor Chowron turned to Sailor Corellia and Coruscant, panicked to find the young centaur's voice as he have to yell, We need ideas, now! Corellia, meanwhile, holding two crystal shards together and hitting them against each other with limited success.
This is hopeless!
She finally exclaimed, clenching her fists. Siegfried looked for Loey at his friend. His emerald eyes bored into her and said, Nothing's impossible, Jaina. You just have to trust in yourself, your friends, and the Force. He abruptly stood up, grabbed Corellia by the shoulders and stared hard into her brandy-colored eyes. You have to defeat him! His eyebrows furrowed in confusion as she suddenly stared into space. Jaina? Hello? He waved his hand from her face. Did I break something? She suddenly snapped her head over to his direction and exclaimed, Zek, you're a genius! She kissed him on the cheek, then broke away from his brace. Zek stood there for a second, while rubbing the spot where she kissed him. Thanks. Cordelia hurried over to Sailor's Coruscant and defended from here while shouting, Lusa! Terry! Sana! Tion! The sailor Sailor gathered around Cordelia, who held up her crystal shard. I have an idea. Sarah Yavon tossed her silvery hair out of her eyes. Okay, what is it? Cordelia held up her shard and let go of it. Instead of plummeting to the sandy ground, it hovered there, suspended by the Force. We're Sailor Senshi and Jedi Knights. Why not use the Force to levitate them together? Sailor Tyron blinked her brown eyes, then held out her shard. The centaur let go, then levitated the shard over to where Cordelia's shard hovered. The two clinked together and, with a small flash of light, fused together. Coruscant turned her eyes to Cordelia and grinned. Saya, you're a genius. The brunette blushed in embarrassment and shook her head. No, Zek's a genius. He couldn't be in on the secret. She glanced over at Sailor Melody's shoulder and gasped at the increasingly one-sided battle taking place. Zim almost casually was firing off random energy blasts from his right hand. Sailor Pluto was already unconscious on the ground. Blood was seeping from a nasty cut and loose leg, and all he could do was watch over Saturn and Pluto. Mercury was dodging and weaving for all she was worth, but Zim's purple-colored blast finally hit the blue-haired genius and knocked out Mercury to the ground. Zim smirked. Well, looks like I win. He straightened up and began waltzing over to the knot of Sailor Jedi. Time to die, he yelled, both hands glowing. Sek and Anakin looked at each other, then at the approaching demon. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this. He is a demon. We'll buy you some time, Sek said, igniting his lightsaber. Anakin also thumped his lightsaber on. We'll make it count, Yoga Soul stated. Before anyone could protest, the two men lost themselves at Zen. Anakin also thumped it. Coruscant bit her lip in frustration as he levitated the jar over to the two already joined. For some reason, nothing happened. Her brow wrinkled in frustration. What the hell? Dathomir thought for a moment. Perhaps your piece doesn't go there, Mistress Jade. She held out her shard and levitated to the already fused portion. When it touched the floating crystal, a bright light flashed, and a small shard joined the larger group. Guys, while this fight's going on, you have my full permission to go and grab yourselves drinks, some popcorn, and play some of your favorite Sailor Moon songs. I already have one planned for the big moment. I'll let you know when it is. Second Anakin, meanwhile, approached Zim. Sek's quick draw blew his blaster pistol free of his hand and fired off a dozen shots at Zim's head. All 12 bolts raced towards the demon's head, but all 12 deflected off of Zim's barrier. Zim's orange eyes flashed in amusement. Nice try, boy. He motioned with his right hand, and Sek's blaster crumbled into a hunk of garbage. Hey, you worked a long time on that hunk of garbage. Anakin looked over his friend and sighed. I guess it's down to our lightsabers. He then held his lightsaber high while Zek raised his own saber. We'll go in together. Zek simply nodded as he broke off and circled around Zim. After a few moments, both men ran full tilt at the demon with lightsabers swinging. Both Anakin's blue blade and Zek's orange blade were aimed for Zim's head. But they missed as Zim ducked, just in time to avoid being decapitated. Anakin's eyes flashed as he withdrew his blade and thrust again at Zim. Zek simultaneously aimed a toe kick at the spinal column. His foot connected, and his toe bones splintered as he hit his back. Zek's eyes crossed as he pain blossomed with his right leg. He fell back, ignored by Zim as he collapsed with his crippled leg. Zim telekinetically blocked Anakin's attack. Sorry, but you're both done. He raised his right arm and blasted Anakin square in the chest with a burst of dark energy. Anakin flew back with a smoking hole in his shoulder. Eyes wide, chest barely rising. Cordelia winced as he felt her brother's pain, while Jason let out a strangled scream as he too felt Anakin fall. Sharon shrugged out Luke's hands and, using her glaive as a crutch, made her way to the fallen Jedi. Teeth clenched as she turned and made her way to Zim. Her eyes began glowing as she straightened up, and an unnatural wind bellowed around her.
You piece of scum!
She leveled her pole arm at him, blades glowing.
Death be mine!
Zim braced himself for Saturn's attack.
But when none came, and the blaze dimmed, he asked her the one thing on his mind. Why do you not kill me? Saren fumed, her shoulder aching in sympathetic pain from Anakin's injury.
It would be wrong to kill you like this. Cold-blooded murder is not the way of the Jedi.
She sunk to her knees, clutching the staff.
I will not kill you.
Sim scoffed.
I'll let you live long enough to see your friends die. Then, I'll kill you and the rest.
He then moved off, leaving her there. Luke hobbled over on his good leg and collapsed next to her. It was using the Force to lessen the pain, but it was still pain swaying. Hotaru, what you did there was the action of a Jedi. When Anakin learns, he'll be proud of you. Hotaru smiled slightly.
No wonder you're the Jedi Master. You always know the right thing to say.
Seeing her Tatooine levitator shard open. When nothing happened, the young blonde sighed and replied back,
No good!
Siriano thought for a second. Is there any way to figure out the order? Coruscant glanced back at the one-sided battle. I don't think so. Hit and miss all the way. She held out her crystal, levitated to an increasingly larger chunk. With a flash of light, it fused with the others. 4 down, she whispered. Suddenly, all 7 felt their dangerous sights spike. They looked up and saw Zim walking over to their position, hands glowing. Sarah Dathomir broke off and ran in front of him, blocking his path. You shall not go no further! Necessity of balance raised her arms and crossed them in front of her chest. Happen world protection! A glass barrier formed about 30 centimeters from her hand and floated around her, surrounding the Senshi. Zim sighed, raised both arms, and, without preamble, began firing out 2 steady streams of dark heresy. Dathomir grunted as her shield was assaulted by the unholy heresies, weakening her shield and pushing her back. He's too strong! Can't hold this much longer! That's a fact! Sarah Coruscant, knowing her plight, ran over to her. We're stronger together, right? Dathomir glanced over and through gritted teeth said, That is a fact! Coruscant held out her hands and faced them palm out before shouting, Shield of Hope! Sarah Dathomir's original shield flashed as Coruscant's shield burst with it, doubling its strength and expanding out. Sim growled and began pummeling even more dark energy. The violet beams lashed against the barrier in a pyrokinetic frenzy, gradually weakening it. Yava looked at his friends. They bought us some time, but I don't know how much! The yellow Senshi held out her hand and levitated her already fused chunk of crystal. Flash of light, it merged with the other pieces. Tatooine madly glanced at each other.
It's just us now, Tatooine said. I don't know if it should be me or you. What if we're wrong? I don't...
Melody held out one hand in front of Tatooine's mouth and levitated the shard over the other. It joined with the others and, with a bright flash, fused with the others. Everyone's hopes soared as Tatooine almost threw her shard into the almost completed crystal.
We did it! We did it!
Sailor Dathomir's head turned around and looked at the group. Sweat burned down her forehead and into her gray eyes as she and Coruscant struggled to maintain the shield.
Are you finished, friend Shada?
Cordelia looked at her best friend as Tatooine's shard touched the already fused portion. A brilliant white light fell at the floating chunk of crystal, forcing everyone there to shield their eyes. When they looked again, a perfectly formed translucent crystal hung in place. Cordelia held out a trembling hand and pointed from midair.
It's so beautiful,
she murmured, looking it over. Zim observed the forming of the crystal and ceased firing out dark energy, allowing Dathomir and Coruscant to drop their barrier. The 2 stepped back with trembling arms as he advanced, an intent look on his face. Cordelia held the crystal in front of her in a taunting manner.
Do you know what this is, don't you?
The crystal sparkled in the weak sunlight as he waved it around. This will destroy you and end your reign of terror! His mouth curved up into a predatory smile.
And how exactly do you use that pretty bauble? It's not doing anything now. Will it later when your bones are bleaching in the sand?
Tatooine chuckled. There was a hint of nervous side her confidence. So he turned to Cordelia and said, Go on, Gina, blast over the thing! She then leaned forward, looked at the crystal, eyes narrowing.
You do know how to use that thing, right?
She looked around.
Anyone know how to use that thing?
Me, but unfortunately you guys can't hear me. Cordelia turned to the crystal over in her gloved hand. The shape of it was familiar, but she couldn't place it. Her brown eyes threatened to lose themselves in the crystal's beauty. Her left arm dropped to her side and brushed to her holster a lightsaber. She quickly unlinked her lightsaber handle from her skirt and dove to the side.
nearly missing a straight dark blast from Zim. The demon snarled as the Senshi scattered. He saw the prone forms of Jason and Louie and cracked his knuckles. Okay, now play I Know Senshi, English version. Enjoy. Before he could do anything, a red and white blur flashed in front of his eyes, and he heard, "You will not harm them! Definite heat wave!" Zim found himself surrounded by a ring of blue flames. He startled in anger, raised his arms in front of his face and shouted, "That won't hold me." Beside the inferior, Dathomir stood firm, protecting the ring of blue flame from her hands that kept Zim at bay, for now. Melody looked over at the grim-faced woman.
Why don't you just light his body on fire?
Dathomir's eyes turned slightly and directed in Melody's voice. "If I destroy his body, his spirit will escape. And that is a fact. We must delay him until Jaina can figure out how to use that crystal." Coruscant ran over to Jason and Louie and knelt down. She raised her hands and faced him, pulled down and shouted, "Shield of Hope!" Just before the barrier reached his stand, Luna dashed inside. Coruscant looked down at the black cat.
I was wondering where you were,
she said, winking. Luna looked up. Her tiny shoulders hopped and shrugged.
Not exactly useful in a fight, you know.
An unnatural strong wind began picking up, setting a sandstorm and dousing Dathomir's flames. "I can't continue," she shouted, struggling to be heard over the howling wind. Melody stretched forth and held out her hand.
Pulela and Stefant!
The yellow-eyed Senshi shouted. A purple wave of energy shot out from the palm of her hand and expanded, wrapping around Zim's right arm. Sarah Yavin also stepped forward. The 11th Senshi knelt down, half closed her eyes, and crossed her arms in front of her body. Fog of truth. A great fog flowed from around the ground and enveloped Zim. His eyes widened, and his breath quickened as images coalesced in the fog, images of the past. He saw his battle droids wiped out by Hutts, and felt the imprisonment of his spirit long ago. The weight of over 25,000 years began to settle upon his soul, dragging it down. Outside the fog's perimeter, Yava's silver eyes closed, in completely concentration, as he projected memories into Zim's mind. Her mouth tightened in concentration. Melody felt the pressure of her energy net slacken. An odd feeling permeated her mind, what he really felt. Hope.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think it's working!
5 seconds later, a strong gust of wind picked up, burying everyone with kicked-up sand. Yava managed to maintain the fog, but it quickly disappeared and was blown away. Zim snarled and his right hand dug into a fist, sending a stream of Sith lightning racing towards the lavender energy strands that bound the limb. Melody dropped her arm and disconnected herself from the energy web, letting it disintegrate. She jumped back, nearly dodging the deadly bolts that tracked her. Zim looked at Sarah Yavin and nodded in respect. "Not bad. You attacked my mind. Not many people would go your route." Yavin glanced back at Sarah Corellia. She was trying to unscrew the admitted player for a lightsaber, but the gloves she wore made it a little more difficult than normal. Sarah Charon was attending to the wounded Jedi, and says he strewn about the now devastated sand. Coruscant was guarding Louie, Jason, and Luna. That left her, Dathomir, Matui, Melody, and Tatooine to slay Zim. I knew being a Jedi Knight would be dangerous. I just didn't think I'd be holding off a 25,500-year-old dark side spirit while a trainee tries to assemble the ultimate weapon! The other Jedi struck a pose and said defiantly, "You'll go no further, Zim. Your darkness ends here." Tatooine stepped up next to Yavin and also struck a pose. "It's time you went back to the grave, Zim." Dathomir pointed at the demon from the side. "As a fact, your time is over, Zim." Even Sailor Melody struck a pose, albeit relenting.
Say your prayers, ghost,
she mumbled. All 4 Senshi stood shoulder to shoulder and shouted at the top of her lungs, "In the name of the Force! Ashioka?" Zim snarled. "Those words are petty. I'll make you eat them." He raised his arms and concentrated, building up massive amounts of power. His arms glowed with power before releasing a massive blast. Sailor Dathomir raised her arms and shouted, "Happen Wall of Protection!" A crystal-like barrier formed around the 4 Senshi, mere milliseconds before Zim's shockwave hit them full bore. The unstoppable force hit the immovable object, straining Dathomir to her very limits. Her thoughts focused on the one thing. Must keep the barrier up! Must keep the barrier up! Even as she poured energy into the shield, cracks began to form into the Happen Wall of Protection. Tatooine raised her hands and faced them palm out. "Tatooine Sea Blast!" A blizzard of silicate particles shot from her hands and enveloped Zim, forcing him to raise a barrier around himself or risk mummification. The erasing of a barrier diverted energy from his shockwave, allowing Dathomir to not expend so much power. All four Senshi knew that he could not last forever against Zim. Melody turned her head and shouted at Cordelia,
Do you have that crystal ready yet?
Cordelia's fingers ached as she unscrewed the emitter plate from her lightsaber. The hilt wasn't expressly designed for what she was trying to accomplish, but she had a feeling it would work. It had to work. There was no other option available to her. After a few minutes, the plate finally came off, allowing her to tip the handle over and extract the old emitter crystal. She slid the lavender gem on a flap on her boot, then held her lightsaber hilt in her left hand, while deftly putting the recently constructed castle into the shot. Cordelia then screwed the emitter plate back on and held the weapon up. She could feel it pulsing with power.
I just hope it just doesn't decide to flow up in my face.
She looked up just in time to hear Sarah Melody Crystal yell out, Do you have that crystal ready yet? A sardonic smile crossed Cordelia's lips as she nodded and held her newly refurbished saber high.
Everyone, stand back.
Sarah's Yavin, Melody, and Tatooine dove out of Cordelia's line of fire, while Dathomir let her Hoffman wall of protection fade a bit before making a dash to the side. The barrier quickly shattered and dissolved, but Zim ceased his shockwave. He saw Cordelia standing there, holding her lightsaber straight out, while everyone else dove out of the way. A simple plasma weapon won't hurt me, he mocked. There was a smile on his face, but he quickly failed as he fenced the raw power emerging from the weapon. Both arms shot up and glowed with built-up energy. Electricity crackled around his forearms as pure dark side energy amassed before twin blaze of lavender energy spewed forth, shooting Cordelia. For Sailor Cordelia, time slowed as a crawl as beams of death raced toward her. She gripped her lightsaber in both hands and pointing it into the onrushing maelstrom. 4 words automatically spilled from her lips, registering in her brain as she had always known them.
Crystal, saber, attack!
Oh yeah, Quincy for the motherfucking win, baby. A brilliant beam of pure white energy shot out from the emitter plate, hitting Zim's twin beams of destruction and sending forth a dark shockwave as they fought against each other. Struggling and pulsing, Cordelia gritted her teeth as she poured all of her heart and soul into the beam. But Zim snarled and increased the flow of dark side energy pouring through his arms. Cordelia's pure white beam was gradually pushed back, no matter how hard she thought. Coruscant lowered the shield surrounding her. Jason, Loie, and Luna when she saw the battle going on. She looked at Luna and shouted, I've got to help her! Luna nodded. Sailor Senshi are their most powerful when working as a team. Spread the word! Coruscant nodded and ran over to Cordelia, her legs kicking up a sand as she made her way there. Her green eyes soon spotted Sailor Chiron trotting over as well. A smile crossed her lips as she opened up through the force and directed a thought to Centaur. Get to Jaina. She needs our help. Chiron's head tilted to the side as he nodded, galloped around the standoff. Dathomir, Tatooine, Melody, Yavin quickly got the message and began making their way over to their friend. Their movements were not noticed by Zim, but the demon could do nothing to stop them, deadlock as he was. He increased the power to the beam, but Korea's attack held fast. He was nearing his own limits too. I hope you people appreciate the thought that this is a lightsaber powered by the Squid Suisho. Sarah Korea had sweat pouring down her forehead and was near despair. Her head shook, not only from the vibrations of the energy beam tangling with Zim's power, but also from sheer exhaustion. Just as she reached the point of collapse and was about to surrender to oblivion, she felt a hand cover her own. She looked and smiled, seeing Sailor Coruscant standing there. The Jedi Master concentrated and poured some of her own energy into the Quincisho, strengthening it. She then felt the nourished hand and glanced to the left. Dathomir's regal face grunts in concentration. Sailors Tatooine and Melody lined up next to Dathomir, while Yava and Charon stood next to the Coruscant. All Senshi put their hands over Korea's and lent some of their energy to the attack. You know, I love this moment in any Sailor Moon final fight. The beam of pure white light side energy blazed with power, pushing back Zim's attack. The demon's orange eyes grew as he flickered the panic overtook him. After a minute, his concentration finally faltered. The two beams of lavender energy ebbed in power, allowing the Sensei's attack to blow him apart and envelop him. His final thoughts were of denial, They can't do this to me. I am Zim the Despot. I am Zim! Zim is me! The light grew, enveloping first the fallen Senshi, then Luke, Anakin, and Zack, and expanded out, and finally enveloping the Sailor Senshi, Jason, Lily, Luna, and a spear of white light energy. It finally shrank back and collapsed in on itself, and the beam stopped. Cordelia looked around.
What happened?
Coruscant glanced around at her shoulder, and guessed when she saw Jason and Lily standing injury free.
I think we won.
Jason looked over at his sister and waved. Nice job, sis, he yelled. I can tell jokes again. Cordelia smiled at him. Let a yell, someone grabbed her from behind and spun her around. A bolt of panic raced through her as she sat down. Saw that she swiftly turned around.
Zack, you're all right!
The young man smiled and hopped on his right foot. I don't know what happened, but I feel better than ever, he said. What did you do? Cordelia concentrated for a moment, and a bright light enveloped her. When it faded, she was once more Jaina Solo. The young woman stepped up to Zack and gave him a peck on the nose.
That's for saving my life,
she whispered to him. Zack closed his eyes and shook his head. I'm not the one who converted your lightsaber into the ultimate weapon. He looked down at it and whistled softly. Jaina wrapped her arms around his looking form and pulled him for a hug.
True, but you did give me the idea for reassembling the crystal.
Zack shrugged a smirk, wrapping his arms around her and returning the hug. Okay, I'll take credit for that. Sailor Dathomir walked up to the now standing Jason and Lily. The tall Wookiee saw her and let out a bellow of triumph as MTD spoke up.
Master Lobaka wishes to congratulate you on the most splendid victory.
Dathomir concentrated for a second, and a flash of light referred to Tanaka. She smiled faintly at the droid.
I understood him, MTD.
She turned and walked to Jason before extending her hand and running a finger along his lower jaw. Electricity shot through where her finger touched his skin.
How are you healed?
Jason shrugged. I don't know. Maybe it was something to do with that final flash of light, or whatever it was. He looked at her quizzically. What was that, anyway?
Tanaka shrugged. I have no idea. I'll have to ask Luna.
Jason nodded. Then a trademark solo smile blossomed across his face. Say, want to hear a joke? It's a good one, I swear. Lily groaned in annoyance and said wildly, No joke. Haven't we been through enough already? Tanaka placed the Wookiee no mind as he spoke from her heart.
Yes.
The brown-haired Jedi thought for a second. How many Jedi Sailor Senshi does it take to destroy a dark side spirit?
I don't know.
Jason leaned in close, holding back laughter, and said, Ha ha! All of them!
Tanaka nodded.
Her smiling expression didn't change, but her great eyes sparkled. Lily looked at Jason and grumbled a question.
Master Jason, Master Lobaka doesn't get it. And for that matter, neither do I.
Whoa, did the camera just pan up and the credits start rolling? No. This isn't the last chapter. 10 meters away, Sailor Yavon, Luna, and Sailor Coruscant approached Luke, Pluto, Mercury, and Anakin and Saturn. The Senshi quickly referred to their civilian identities in multiple flashes of light, while Luke and Anakin simply deactivated their lightsabers and clipped into their belts. Tian walked up to Setsuna and gave her friend a hug.
I'm glad you're all right,
she said, smiling in relief. Setsuna gave Tian's shoulder a brief squeeze.
I am glad you are as well.
Meanwhile, Tairi Hotaru tackled the newly healed Anakin.
Don't ever scare me like that again,
Tairi yelled. Anakin struggled not to fall down. I'm all right, he stated. But a chill raced through him as his fingers brushed against the hole in his shirt. He glanced over at Hotaru, who was about to speak, but then noted the haunted look in her violet eyes.
I thought you were gone.
Anakin's mouth said to himself in a grim line. I won't leave my friends like that. It'll take more than a dark side berserker spirit to keep me from you. He put his hands on her shoulder. I promise you, Hotaru, I won't leave you. Oh, just kiss each other already. Hotaru nodded and tried to smile, but it seemed to make her even sadder. Luke ran his fingers along where the gash in his leg was. All that was left of the crippling wound was the ripped fabric of his pants. What happened? He asked, confusion running through his voice. I felt a tremendous surge in the force. Then all our wounds were healed. Luna sat down in the sand and looked up at the towel-headed Jedi Master.
I'm not sure, but the crystal assembled by the Senshi is probably similar to the Quinsuiso crystal used by Usagi in our world.
Mara looked down at the cat and wrinkled her eyebrows in confusion.
The Quinsuiso? What's that?
Hotaru spoke up.
It's a crystal worn by Isagi, assembled when the first enemies attacked Tokyo. Its power is limited only by a user's will. It can heal, destroy, kill, or raise the dead.
Mara's eyes involuntarily went over to her niece. The thought of anyone wielding that much power sent a shiver of fear running up her spine. If she ever went to the dark side. Luke suddenly grabbed Mara by the shoulder and spun her around. He looked his wife in her eyes. Jaina will not fall. That much I am certain. Mara cast slightly, before looking back and seeing Jaina talking with Tyree and Lusa. She tentatively reached out and lightly probed Jaina with the force. After a few seconds, he sighed in relief and felt no darkness from her. Jaina looked up and waved at her aunt. Mara smiled and waved back. Luke's comm suddenly chirped. He unclipped it from his belt and held it to his mouth. This is Luke Skywalker. Go ahead. A gravelly voice came over the speaker grill. Master Skywalker, this is Admiral Akbar. Alright, this is once. It's a trap! Luke smiled at it with a familiar voice. How goes it, Admiral? Akbar's voice had a hint of pride as his voice came through the tiny grill. It goes well, Master Skywalker. We captured the Victory-class Star Destroyer in orbit with no loss of life. That's great. A look of confusion slipped over Luke's face. What are you going to do with the clones on board? Akbar spoke again. They surrendered peacefully. It turns out they're willing to be incorporated into the Army as a special unit. Beyond that, we don't know. He paused before continuing. Do you require transportation off the moon? Luke shook his head. No. We have vehicles and will be lifting off momentarily. Akbar spoke once more before the link terminated. Very well. Smooth sailing, Luke. Luke clicked the comm link to his belt and turned to Mara. Well, now that business is taken care of, we have more pressing matters to attend to. Hotaru looked up to him. A look of confusion spread over her pale face as he asked,
Pardon me for asking, but what are you referring to, Master?
The first Jedi Master looked down at the young woman and smiled. Simple. You and your friends. He made a sweeping motion with his left arm, encompassing everyone. Must prepare for your final trial and ascension, the full Jedi Knight. Chapter 12. I dub thee Jedi. Jaina held her lightsaber held up and looked it over, not sure what to do with it. It had been 2 weeks since the Sailor Jedi had destroyed Zim's spirit, and after each one had gone through their final trial, preparations for their knighting ceremony were also almost complete. She sat on the rooftop of the great temple, looking at the gas giant Yaban 4 orbited. Two familiar presences ascended the staircase to the roof. As she turned her head just in time to see Mizuno Ami emerge from the stairwell.
Hi, Ami. Hi, Luna.
She greeted, motioning them to come over. Ami smiled and sat down, while Luna curled up in Gina's lap.
How are you doing, Jaina?
Ami asked. Gina shrugged. I don't know. The past couple of weeks have been kind of a whirlwind. She held up her lightsaber. Luna, can I ask you a question? Luna looked up, scratched behind her ear, and spoke.
Of course.
The young woman hesitated before asking, What do I do with this? Luna's whiskers switched in bewilderment.
I'm not sure I understand.
Jaina shrugged again.
It's just, this is so powerful. I mean, I could still use it as an ordinary lightsaber, but not calling upon the crystal's power, but do I deserve this power?
Ami placed a hand on her shoulder.
That question alone confirms that you should use it.
The blue-haired genius continued, before Jaina could protest.
Power such as the Senshi cannot be taken lightly. Telka's slip into the dark side proved that. But our power has always been to be on the light side. We've almost always used our powers to help. I don't see that changing with any of you.
Jaina let a toothy grin spread across her face. Thanks, Ami. Jaina lifted Luna off her lap and deposited a cat on the stone roof. They both rose and headed for the staircase. I got a present for you before you go, Jaina said. Ami's blue eyes lit up.
Oh, I hope it's an hyperdrive motivator. Your father let me work on a Millennium Falcon's motivator when I helped him.
Jaina let out a laugh as they made their way down to the stairs and into the great temple. Luna simply sat on the edge of the rooftop.
How rude,
she intoned.
I would have gotten off on my own.
Jason sat his head on his old room. All the cages were empty. The animals were either let go or donated to the Coruscant Zoo. He felt lonely in here. Empty. His eyes glanced to the door as he felt a familiar presence coming. Hey, Dad. Han sighed as he rounded the door job and entered his son's room. I didn't get used to that when your mother does it, and I don't think I'll get used to it when my children do it to me. He walked over and sat down. What's on your mind? Jason looked up. You know, after seeing my inner self, as Luke put it, and after all the preparations for tonight, I was able to put it out of my mind. He held his hands and looked down. Yet, now there's a quiet moment. I can remember the look on his face when he impaled himself on my lightsaber. He looked over at Han. Dad, I know Yulik wanted to die, and I know there wasn't any way to save those clones, but I can't help but wonder if there was some way, any way, to save any of them. The older soldier nodded. You're a better man than I am, Jason. He's more emphatic. He scooted over and patted his son on the hand. Jason, I don't know if there was any way to save those clones. Luke wanted to, but you saw the results. He paused for a moment and organized his thoughts. Jason, in a situation like that, it's killed or be killed. Even Jedi have to take lives. Jason nodded, lowering his hands. It's a last resort for us, Dad. Always has been, always will be. Even if the enemy's programmed to kill you. A waning smile crossed his face as he stood up. I played the scenario in my mind over and over, and the only way it ends differently is if I die. Han's eyes narrowed. It's a good thing it ended the way it did, Jason. You can't second guess your actions. What's done is done, son. He rose and hugged his son. Surprised he was almost the same height as him. You've grown into a fine, fine young man. I'm proud of you, Jason. Jason returned a hug. Thanks, Dad. It means a lot. I guess I could go off and see the galaxy, right? Han smirked. Just be sure you be back before midnight. Or turn out the light when you pull the ship in. Tian, Kam, and Setsuna observed the labor droid, placing the final row of test tubes in place. The trio stood in one of the lower levels of the great temple, just above the communications room and hangar. Tian's silver eyes looked around the room at two shelves of test tube in the center of the room. 3 walls with cells bolted into them. Fans blew temperature-controlled air into the room, causing everyone's breath to be visible. Cam shook his head. I hope Luke knows what he's doing. The tough-looking Jedi grunted out. The vials contained genetic material from Jedi Masters and Sith Lords from the past 2,500 years. They were previously on Kamino, but Luke had appropriated them and had them brought to the Academy for safekeeping. Tian flipped a newly installed switch on the wall, activating stasis fields around the shelves. She turned to her husband and best friend, smiling slightly.
Well, let's hope that these can rest in eternal slumber for now.
Setsuna nodded and half closed her eyes before allowing herself to slip into the time stream.
I think those files won't see the light of day for a very long time.
The 3 Jedi left the room and headed for a stairwell. They quickly ascended and reached the cafeteria. The women found a table while Cam waited in line for some food. Tiana glanced at Setsuna.
Setsuna, I want to thank you for everything you've done over the past few months.
The Guardian Time himself shrugged.
It was my duty as a Sailor Senshi, just as it will be your duty in the years to come.
Both ladies looked up as Cam walked over with 3 trays of food levitating in front of him. A bowl of Crockett stew with a side of Corleone rolls floated in front of Setsuna. A slab of seaweed bath of rams landed in front of Tion, with a large sandwich floated in front of Cam.
Thank you,
Setsuna said with a slight bow. Tion leaned over and gave her husband a kiss on the cheek.
Thanks, honey.
He turned to Setsuna, and with a twinkle in brown eyes spoke, Ikemasu! Setsuna's lips turned out lightly in a smile.
How did you learn that?
She asked. Ken shrugged as he bit into the sandwich. Ask Tommy about it during your presentation on Japanese foods and customs. Setsuna nodded in admiration. Ken's pronunciation was just about perfect.
So, how are preparations for the knighting ceremony?
Tion stopped eating and thought for a moment.
In a place tight out the dock, dignitaries from across the New Republic are already arriving, along with a lot of Jedi.
Ken suppressed a smile at that. Kip Tura challenged Lusa to a lightsaber duel. It was a long fight, but eventually defeated him. I don't think he's ever been embarrassed in his entire life. Tion laughed, causing a bit of meat to go down the wrong pipe. She wiped tears from her eyes as she hacked. Both Setsuna and Ken looked in alarm as the elven Jedi continued to cough. After a minute, Tion's lungs settled down and she could breathe again. Are you alright? Cam asked, concern and worry evident in his face.
Tion nodded. Yeah.
She drank some water and cleared her throat. Dear, next time, don't tell such funny stories while I'm swallowing, alright?
Cam nodded. Yes, dear.
Sasuna held tinted. I have an appointment with Mara.
She stated as he got up.
Tian smiled. See you at the knighting ceremony.
Sasuna nodded.
I'll be there.
And with that, the elegant lady walked out the cafeteria. Cam noticed the head of sadness coming off his wife. Something wrong?
Tian sighed. Sasuna, Ami, Hotaru, and Luna are heading back to Tokyo after the ceremony. And I'll probably never see them again.
Cam slid his chair over and staked his arm around Tian's shoulders before pulling her in for a one-arm hug. Tell me, are you still able to transfer into Sarah Yavin?
Tian ran her fingers through her long silvery hair. Yes. A faint smile crossed his master's withered face.
Well then, a part of her will always remain on this side, won't it?
Tian thought about it, and a small smile formed on her lips. I suppose you're right. She placed her hand on her chest. A part of her will be here with me, and so will a part of Ami, Hotaru, and Luna. Until the end of time, they'll be with me.
Who knows? Celestial willing, we'll all meet again in 3 New Senshi 2, the quest for more money. Oh, come on! I'm sorry! Couldn't resist that one!
Just after sunset, the great temple was ablaze with celebration. Not only to celebrate the Sensei's victory over Zun the Despot, but also to celebrate the promotion of 12 young men and women into a higher standing within the Jedi Order. The main audience chamber was filled with capacity just after sunset, with more wishing to get in. Students filled up the back rows, while New Republic dignitaries and military personnel occupied the middle section. Han Solo, Leia Organa Solo, and Chewbacca were on the main stage with several Jedi Masters, including Mara, Cam, Tion, Kip, and Luke. One chair was curiously empty, but only Luke and Mara knew why. Finally, the students about to be promoted occupied the front row. All dozen wore the same uniform. Tan pants with a white shirt, and a brown hood with robes down. None had their lightsaber, however. A chime finally sounded from the light speakers embedded in the walls, signaling the start of the ceremony. All spectators quieted down, while Luke stepped forward and stood in the front of the podium. 12 lightsabers laid on a table to his right, resembling diplomas about to be handed out. He cleared his throat and drew upon the Force, enabling him to project his voice to the farthest corners of the room. Since the first days of the Old Republic, the Jedi have been aflame against the darkness. The Sith Empire tried to extinguish us, but they failed. Palpatine tried, but he failed. Warlords and a dozen other enemies tried to put us out, but our flame continued. As my master Yoda said, do not do. Do or do not. There is no try. Now, 12 more are ready to contribute to its light. When I call your name, please step forward and be recognized by your new title. Jaina Solo, step forth and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. The brown-haired mechanical genius and eldest child of the Solo stood up and walked over to the side of the main stage, her body shaking imperceptibly. She extended the steps and stepped up to Luke. He handed Jaina her lightsaber, but before he pulled up her hood, he spoke. Destiny has given you a powerful weapon against the dark side. I know you'll be all right with it, Jaina. Jaina felt incredibly nervous as Luke reached over and pulled the robes up over her head, but she left the stage with her head held high as the next name was called. Tenno Ka Chime Tajo. Step forward and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. My, she's a big one! The proud warrior, a product of 2 desperate cultures and future Queen Mother Nehapi's cluster, stood and marched to the stairs. Luke turned as he approached and handed her a Rancor Crew lightsaber, her second one built. You have a difficult task ahead of you. Whether you rule as a queen or Jedi, your path won't be easy. Luke's stern features softened as he continued. I know whatever you do, you'll be all right. He pulled her hood up and over her head. He could see fire in her gray eyes. Then he turned as she walked off. Tyree Vila, step forth and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. The blonde leapt up and ran to the stairs. Tyree had been raised by Tusken Raiders on the distant wasteland of Tatooine, forced in his fire, and she could barely contain her enthusiasm as she ran up to Luke. Luke smiled as he handed her a recently built lightsaber, the metal still gleaming. Tyree beamed as Luke leaned in and stated, You've suffered tragedies in your young life, but you've come back stronger. All of your parents would be proud of you. He pulled the robe's head over to her blonde hair. Hitari floated off the stage. Mizuno Ami, step forward and be recognized as a Jedi. The blue-haired genius rose from her seat and walked over to the stairs. Ami kept her head bowed slightly, and whilst walking up to Luke, her teacher and mentor. Luke's blue eyes twinkled as he handed her a lightsaber. Then he took Ami's chin in his hands and gently tilted her head up. Your genius and love of life is unparalleled, he said. Ami's cheeks reddened in embarrassment as he continued. As long as you stay on the path of light, great things will come from you. He pulled the hood over her head as he whispered,
Thank you, Master Skywalker,
before walking off. Luke turned and beamed as he spoke again. Mayo Setsuna, step forward and be recognized as a Jedi Master. A series of gasps came from the crowd, most from the front row. Setsuna, guardian of time, stood up and walked to the steps as he approached Luke. Her parents handed her her lightsaber. Your wisdom and experience are without equal. You were already promoted to knighthood, so there was only one thing to go. He stepped back and motioned to the empty chair. Now, take your rightful place as a Jedi Master. Bow! Yeah! Setsuna bowed and smiled before walking over to the chair. She hissed up her robes and sat down. Her eyes shone with emerald fire. Anakin Solo, step forth and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. The young man, a virtual carbon copy of the younger Luke, rose and walked to the stairs. He instead stood in front of Luke, looking more like him than Han. Luke handed his youngest nephew his lightsaber and spoke, Anakin, you were named after your grandfather in an effort to redeem that name. I can say with full confidence that you have succeeded. Anakin let a smile light up his normally grim face as Luke pulled his hood over his head. Lubaka, step forward and be recognized as Jedi. The lanky Wookiee let out a roar of triumph and ambled up the stairs, MTD trailing behind and thankfully silent. Luke had to look up in order to look into Loi's brown eyes before handing the Wookiee his lightsaber. A Wookiee Jedi. May the Force have mercy on the next Darksider you face. A wave of laughter swept across the audience as Loi bared his fangs in triumph. Luke reached over to Loi's head and tugged a hood over his furry head. Jacen Solo, step forth and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. The young man's face, already grinning ear to ear, seemed to stretch out even farther as he walked around the side of the podium and ascended the steps. He stopped in front of Luke, who handed him his lightsaber and said only one sentence. Jacen, don't ever stop telling jokes. Jacen's grin turned into a frown of confusion, but before he could say anything, Luke pulled the hood over his head and ended the conversation. Zek of Enith, step forward and be recognized as a Jedi. The wiry young man was an enemy of the Jedi under Baraxis, stood up and walked proudly over the stairs. Luke handed him his lightsaber when he reached the dais. Yours is a tale of redemption. Although raised in the slums and trained by the last of the line of Bane, you still preserved and found the light. He reached over and pulled the hood over Zek's black hair. Tomoe Hotaru, step forth and be recognized as Jedi. The small girl rose and walked over to the stairs. She ascended and stood before Luke, coming up to his shoulder in height. She looked up into the stairs' ice blue eyes, with her own violet orbs, both with equal amounts of intensity. Your path has been marked by tragedy, he said, handing her lightsaber, yet you rose above it and became a force for good. Mishiru and Haruka are proud of you. He pulled the robe's hood over her short, obscene black hair, and a fire shone underneath the cloth. Lusa, step forth and be recognized as Jedi. The young centaur stood for a kneeling position, tried over the stairs. She tensed her legs for a moment, and then leapt up onto the stage and over the stairs, landing in front of Luke. The Jedi Master nodded in admiration of her athleticism and handed her saber. You have overcome prejudice and brainwashing, something not many people can claim. Your powers and will shall only grow as time goes on. Lusa bent down, allowing Luke to reach over and tug the hoods over her curly brown hair and crystal horns. Wait, she's a freaking centaur and has crystal horns? Eee! Sana, step forth and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. The young outcast rose from her seat and walked over the stairs. She almost tripped over the hem of her robe as she walked up, but quickly regained her balance, face flushing. Young Melody stood before Luke, who handed her the lightsaber as he finished building last night. Your society wrongly rejected you for things beyond your control. We of the Jedi shall always accept you, no matter what. He pulled her hood over her brown hair, but he swore he could see tears coming from her yellow eyes. Lasana walked up the stage and sat back down. Luke turned back to the audience. Trixie Lulamoon, step forward and be recognized as a Jedi Knight. Trixie, what are you doing?
Well, Trixie figured out that if everybody else decided to become a Jedi Knight, it was time for the great and powerful Trixie to become a great Jedi Knight.
Trixie, you lack the patience, the skill, and the forthright to
Look here, Trixie's becoming a Jedi.
I'm not stopping her. Are you? All 12 here have shown remarkable courage over their lifetime. They have overcome obstacles and defeated the forces of evil. He motioned to the front row of his cybernetic hand in a tone, I ask that you now stand and face the audience. The 11 sitting there did, and Setsuna rose. The Jedi Master then looked to the audience. I now ask that you recognize the newest members of the Jedi Order. The main audience chamber erupted into a frenzy of applause as the newest Jedi walked down the central aisle, into the back, and departed. 3 hours later, a group of tired new Jedi Knights and one Jedi Master made their way up to the Great Temple's rooftop. The night was clear and warm, and the gas giant Yavin 4 already had set, plunging the moon into true night. Jason looked up and grinned, his face swallowed into darkness, but his soul shining brightly. I can't believe I'm a full Jedi Knight. Telecom walked up to him and snaked her right arm around his waist.
That is a fact, friend Jason. I cannot believe you are a Jedi Knight either.
Jason's jaw dropped as he finished. It took him a half second before the implications of what he said dawned on him. Tenno-Ka, you told a joke! The warrior queen turned her head and looked to his eyes.
Is that a fact?
She almost stuttered, barely able to suppress a smile. Jason brought his right hand up to Tenno-Ka's nose and gave it a quick little tweak. In response, the flame-haired woman broke off and twirled around.
You are dead!
Jason let out a belly laugh, just before Tenno-Ka tackled to the ground.
Get him a room, you two!
Jaina said in mock disgust. Jason turned his head to the side and looked up at his twin sister. You're one to talk. Jaina and Zek, who was standing shoulder to shoulder with their arms wrapped around each other's waist, and also holding hands, quietly disentangled themselves. Zek walked over to Jason and patted his best friend on the shoulder. I can't believe this. I never thought I'd be here on Yavin 4, getting sworn as a Jedi Knight. Jason shrugged. Well, I'm glad you're here instead of the Shadow Academy. We all are. Ami and Taru separated from the group and walked to the edge of the rooftop and sat down, letting their feet dangle over the side. The blue-haired genius leaned forward and looked over the others.
These have some have been the best months of my life.
Anara nodded.
I agree. I'll miss everyone here.
Terry housed out from the back.
Can't you stay? Well, I'll miss you if you go.
Setsuna shook her head. Our time here is over. To stay any longer might be destructive to the timeline. She turned to Tion, and with her voice slightly breaking, said, I'll miss you. Tion swallowed tears and closed her eyes tightly as she hugged Setsuna.
I'll miss you too. Thanks for helping me get my head out of those musty old books and holocrons.
Setsuna chuckled as he broke away.
Just remember to look up, and you'll be fine.
All present suddenly felt 3 beings ascending the stairwell. A moment later, Luke, Mara, and Luna emerged and looked around. I'm glad to see everyone here, the Jedi Master stated. His blue eyes shone with happiness as he beheld the ladies of his Jedi Academy. All of you have made us very proud. Jaina felt some moisture gather in her eyes as he wiped it away quickly. Luna walked up to the brown-eyed woman and sat down.
Jaina, I have a gift for you. Please come closer.
Jaina's eyebrows furrowed as he knelt down on one knee. A crescent-shaped beam of light shot from Luna's forehead, striking her right between the eyes. After a minute, the beam faded. Jaina's fangs swam for a moment as he quickly got up, except grabbed her shoulders to prevent her falling over.
What was that?
She exclaimed. Luna stepped up on all fours.
You now have the ability to determine whether or not someone is a Sailor Senshi.
Jaina blinked several more times as the implications of that sank in. What? You mean there are more of us? She looked around. More Sailor Senshi? Hotaru stepped up from the ledge and walked over.
Every planet with sentient life has the ability to produce Sailor Senshi, but there can only be 2 per planet. Senshi are also functionally immortal.
Well, more if you count the asteroids. Mara walked over to the young woman, cocking her head to the side.
Functionally, what do you mean?
Hotaru turned her head and bored to Mara with her violet eyes.
All these and disease will never claim you, but standing at ground zero of explosion will hurt and possibly kill you.
Mara suppressed a shudder. Thanks, I think. The former emperor's hand had pulled out a small box from her belt and handed it to Hotaru. I didn't want you to leave empty-handed, so here. The raven-haired Senshi took it, and opening the lid, gently pulled out a crystalline spear mounted on a wooden base. Her thumb brushed against a button at the base, causing an internal mechanism to begin whirring. The crystal glowed and projected a hologram of Hotaru and Jason in the jungle. Jason was showing Hotaru an insect he had caught, while the young girl was doing her best not to run from it. After a few seconds, the image shifted to one of Tennoka and Tairi. Hotaru looked up at Mara and smiled.
I will cherish it always.
Mara nodded and looked around. I've got one for Ami and Setsuna, too. Ami and Setsuna approached the red-headed Jedi Master and received her holo projector. All 3 placed it in the satchel they slung over their shoulder. Setsuna looked around, as if trying to burn the image of all of them there in her mind. She raised her right arm, and an ornate rod appeared in her hand. It is time, she said. Ami, Hotaru, Jaina, Tairi, Tennoka, Mara, and Tion raised their right arms and concentrated. Their transformation wands appeared in them, and they shouted out, Put out crystal power! Make up!
Mercury crystal power, make up! Saturn crystal power, make up!
Corellia, star power, make up!
Tatooine, star power, make up!
Dathomir, star power, make up! Coruscant, power, make up! Yavin, power, make up! After a few seconds, the great temple's rooftop shone brighter than it was daytime. The light faded. Sailors Pluto, Mercury, Saturn, Corellia, Tatooine, Dathomir, Coruscant, and Yavin stood ready. Jason, Loie, Zek, Anakin, Lusa, Sana, and Luke backed off while the 8 Senshi formed a circle. They all joined hands while Luna bounded in the middle. Sharon looked over at Anakin.
I'll miss you.
She sighed. Anakin looked away. And I'll miss you. A gust of wind picked up, blowing everyone's hair around, while a syphilis glow surrounded each Senshi. At the height of the wind, Luna yelled out, Sailor! Luke suddenly shouted a response, Teleport! A glow fell at the circle, and when it faded, they were gone. Lusa sighed, I'll miss them already. Lloyd nodded and growled, Master Lubaka wishes to express similar sentiments. As do I, MTD said. Jason looked over at his uncle. His thoughts back to when he and Hotaru were in the jungle, and he sheltered that insect. Come on, it won't bite. Hotaru suppressed a shudder as Jason held out his hand. It had a large thing. It had 8 legs like a spider, but the body was angular and almost square. One of his fangs jutted from a mouth, and lead liquid, possibly poison, dripped from the fangs. She tentatively held out a hand.
It won't bite, will it?
She squeaked. Jason chuckled. Don't worry, what could go wrong? I mean, some poisonous, I think. Before Hotaru could speak, Jason dumped the anthropod into her hand. The Senshi Death could normally stare down dark-sided apps and rampaging monsters without blinking, dropped the creature, and ran out shrinking. Jason quickly scooped it up and ran after her. Hey, I think it likes you! Jason let out a belly laugh, surprising everyone there. What are you so tearful about? Jason waved him off with one hand and wiped his eyes on there. Oh, nothing. Just some old memories. He wrinkled up and thought of something. Hey, Uncle Luke, does Aunt Mara have any more of those holo projectors? Luke glanced over his shoulder and nephew nodded. Yes, but she's waiting for a life day to give them to you. No! That holiday special never happened! Okay, to be frank, there's not completely all that bad. I mean, there are worse Star Wars related things, and I can find some great comedy bits by making fun of it. It's quite a joy to riff, kind of like Plan 9 from outer space. Jason groaned.
But that's 3 months from now. Can we have them sooner? Sana rolled her eyes.
And they call tiring immature.
She grumbled, and a bright flash of light lit up the roof. When it faded, sailors Tatooine, Corellia, Dathomir, Yavon, and Coruscant stood once more on the rooftop circle. Corellia let go of Dathomir in Tatooine's hands and dropped her arms to the side. She closed her eyes and concentrated, referring to Jaina Solo. The other 4 quickly did the same, chasing back to Tairi, Tenaka, Mara, and Tion. Mara walked over to her husband and staked her right arm around his left. I'll see you tomorrow, she said as the two made their way to the stairwell. Luke looked her over. Sleep in. You deserve it. And then the two disappeared to the great temple. Sage stepped on the yacht. Ugh, it's late. Almost everyone left the rooftop, but 3 stayed. Tairi shifted from one bare foot to another.
I never even got to show off my lightsaber to Ataru,
She mumbled.
and it looks great.
Tina patted her on the back. Don't worry. I have a feeling we'll see them again. She turned to Telaka, but the red hair was looking at the jungle, gray eyes. The events of the past year and a half played out for her. First, they battled the Jedi in Palpatine's combined form, gaining the power of the Sailor Senshi. She remembered the bitter taste of falling to the dark side, only to have love and laughter save her soul. Defeating Lamia's grip over her soul and destroying the Book of Sith took much of it all. But gaining star power and defeating Bryce's clones revitalized all. Finally, forming the Silver Crystal and helping Jaina defeat Zim's spirit, forged an unbreakable bond among the Sailor Senshi. Graduating and taking the title Jedi Knight was the icing on the cake. Tenaka turned back to the two. I believe that is a fact. We will see them again, but only the future knows when. Until then, we must carry out the mission of Sailor Senshi and Jedi Knights. She turned from the ledge and walked over. For love and justice! Tairi's face broke into a grin as she continued. Pretty soldiers in sailor suits! Jaina stood between her two friends and posed, in the name of the Force! Daniel! 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 All 3 posed and shouted, We'll punish you!
Hey,
What is it, Pinky?
this feels like an ending. It doesn't have to end, does it?
No, it doesn't, Pinky. Not at all. But first, let's discuss this review. This fanfic, I'm not going to lie, is freaking awesome! It's like somebody looked at my life from reading so many bad Sailor Moon crossovers and went, you know what? You need a break. Here's awesome. I mean, okay. I have read my fair share number of fanfics, and I'm not going to say that this completely matches with some of the best of the best. You know, and most of those best of the best are pony related. Big surprise. But I will tell you this, from the bottom of my heart. This is some of the best Sailor Moon fanfic I've ever read. Some of the best Sailor Moon crossover fanfiction out there. It deserves of high praise, and people need to look at this type of thing more when they need to know what makes a good fanfic, what makes a good crossover story. I mean, look at this. The Senshi are relegated to wimps or sissies. The powers, treated like bosses. The other characters, equals. The characters, in character. The story, flows. The plot, is good. The ideas, great. I mean, we just had Luke Skywalker face off against Darth Maul, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Mace Windu. How cool is that? You're never going to get something like that out of any normal expanded universe material. We've had a cool battle against this omnipresent Sith demon that I never even heard of. And quite frankly, I've got to read more of this stuff to find out more. I'm trying my best to figure out what to say that makes me love this so much, and I'm at a loss for words. Seriously. I mean, it's all right there. The characters, the story, the people, the action.
again, while spelling mistakes and I feel like some points are too short are there, I feel like I'm almost nitpicking just to say something bad about it. When, in fact, I'm looking at this and just reading and going, ah, I feel like it's a good chaser when you experience a fanfic hell like Fridays, right, people? I look at this and I think to myself, yeah, that's the type of fanfic I want to write. This is my second time going through this arc, and I find myself being just as intrigued and into it then as I am now. There is literally no difference between me and my enjoyment. And yes, this is my second favorite arc of the whole series. The next one's my favorite. And you'll see why. Trixie? Problems?
Luke said I was too unfocused.
I could have told you that, Trix! See? I could have told her all about that. But no, does she listen to me? No. But anyway, this story is the type of story that makes you want to read it. Makes you invested in the world. Makes you care about the characters. Makes you involved. And it makes you see why both Sailor Moon and Star Wars is an awesome piece of material. And all I can say is, do you want a small trailer? Do you want to know what's going to happen next? Here's a hint. Galaxia. And P.S. You're going to see some more crossover craziness because it's going to rock! Tune in November where I will proceed to give you on high the fourth and final arc of 3 New Senshi. Well, final arc for now. But seriously, how can you top the fourth one? It's just glorious! That's one down, 1,000 more to go. I'll see all of you wonderful people next time.